My name is Michael Flynn. I'm an attorney at the Helmuth & Johnson firm and a member of the Chamber, and I'll be the moderator tonight. All candidates for the Scott County Board of Commissioners were invited to participate. Good evening. Welcome to the 2020 Scott County Commissioners Forum, sponsored by the Shakopee Chamber and Visitors Bureau. Tonight we're gathered at the Shakopee High School. My name is Michael Clem. I'm an attorney at Helmuth & Johnson and a member of the Chamber, and I'll be serving as the moderator tonight. All candidates for the Scott County Board of Commissioners were invited to participate. With us this evening are Commissioner Barb Weckman-Brecky, Ms. Margaret Pleasant, and Commissioner Tom Wolf. The candidates are arranged in alphabetical order. Candidates have already recorded video interviews to introduce themselves, so we will not be doing opening statements tonight. I would encourage you to watch those statements that they've recorded that are available on the Chamber website. Tonight, candidates will be asked a series of questions. They will have up to 60 seconds to respond to each question. As a moderator, I'm also allowed to ask a follow-up question, and in that case, they will have 30 seconds to respond. Each candidate also has the opportunity to make rebuttals on 2 occasions. So moving now into our questions, the first is to Ms. Brecky. What is the role of Scott County to assist businesses during the coronavirus pandemic?
Thank you, Michael. Scott County's role to assist businesses due to COVID has been fairly limited. We don't make the rules, we don't make the guidelines. Our role is to help and assist and make sure businesses can stay open and operate as allowed by the rules. For example, there have been several businesses that have reached out to Scott County Public Health, and our public health directors have assisted them in their plans and made sure that they were safe and available to open. In addition, Scott County's worked to provide PPE to businesses that needed it and couldn't obtain it elsewhere. And then finally, Scott County received CARES funds from the federal government and set up grant programs for small businesses in Scott County to help them mitigate their damages from COVID. So those are a few of the ways that Scott County's been involved in helping small businesses due to COVID.
Ms. Pleasant, what is the role of Scott County to assist businesses during this COVID-19 pandemic?
Thank you, and I'd like to thank the Shakopee Chamber of Commerce for inviting us all here today. As I'm not currently a commissioner, I do talk to a lot of people and a lot of small businesses, and so I know what they've received, and they've said they've received some help. They have expressed a lot of concern about being closed down again, or and the fact that they were closed down for quite a while in the beginning of COVID. So I think the Scott County did a good job in helping them, but there's always more that we can do in supporting them whenever we can. Thank you.
And Mr. Wolf, what is the role of the Scott County Board and Scott County during this pandemic to help businesses?
Okay, well, thank you for the question, and thank you for everybody, and thank you for this opportunity to speak tonight. Yeah, just as Commissioner Weckman-Brecky said, you know, we're doing what we can at the county level. We have the CARES funds. We need to support our businesses. We need to keep things open or try to reopen things up as quick as we can, efficiently as we can, and as safe as we can for everybody involved. Having said that, the unfortunate part of this is that if things don't open up soon, we're gonna lose a lot of businesses, and it's gonna take us quite a while to bring them back. So we have to balance that between the safety and what's good for our businesses. Thank you.
Ms. Pleasant, a similar question to you. What is the role of Scott County to help individuals during this pandemic?
I think that the role of Scott County is to provide lots of information to our citizens and to keep them informed. I think there's a lot of misinformation out of there, so as we talk to our health experts and the doctors and people in our community, trying to get that information out, including what the White House and other agencies and the state government gives us, but to disseminate that information to our people, providing, you know, ideas around PPP and around helping out people is very, very important at this time. And I think we can do a great job of being the people who inform them and provide that information. Thank you.
Mr. Wolf, what is the role of Scott County to help individuals during this pandemic?
You know, it's funny, this whole thing, excuse me, kind of started in, excuse me, December. The administrator and myself, we have monthly meetings, and we started talking about it then. It was not as big a deal. Then January got a little bit of steam on it, and then we started getting correspondences from the White House and from the federal government, you know, saying this is kind of common, watch out for it. So we've been preparing for this, and we've been going along with the CDC guidelines on whatever we can do, making sure people are safe, excuse me, and staying healthy. Thank you.
Ms. Brecky, same question to you.
Thanks,
What is
Michael.
the role of Scott County to help individuals during this pandemic?
First and foremost, our role as Scott County government was to continue to deliver the services that we're mandated to deliver and that are important to our residents. We needed to keep the jail open and operational. We needed to keep the sheriff's department on the road, needed to keep answering those 911 calls, making sure that child protection workers were available to help families, and keep business as usual. That was our first and I think most important role, was to make sure we could still continue to deliver those services that are needed every day by people who live here. Secondly, we needed to protect our workforce and make sure that they could continue working and doing their job safely. And then finally, we're trying to mitigate some of the damages that people have suffered due to COVID, including using CARES dollars to support mortgage foreclosure assistance, eviction prevention, that type of thing. So our role really was threefold: delivering services, keeping our employees safe, and then helping to mitigate damages experienced by our individuals and families who live here.
Mr. Wolf, besides the pandemic, what are the most important issues currently facing Scott County?
The biggest I see is we have our roads and transportation. We want to keep those safe. Our health and human services, we have, excuse me, we have a lot of things going on with the health and human services during this pandemic to keep people safe. Keeping the tax levy in check. Right now, we're looking at the state possibly cutting us, $1 million, a couple million, who knows how many dollars, but so that has to be made up somewhere, so that's going to be a big issue for us. Thank you.
And Ms. Brecky, other than the pandemic, what are the most important issues in the county now?
Thanks, Michael. First and foremost, I think it is to continue to deliver services without raising the tax levy, without spiking the tax levy. Many people don't understand that probably 75% of all the services provided by Scott County are mandated by the state and federal government. We have to do those things. We just got to figure out how to do them well, how to do them efficiently, and how to do them in a way that serves the people that live here. So continuing to understand that tension is really important. Secondly, I think we need to continue to be able to hire and retain a good quality workforce. Going into public services and all that fun nowadays, there's a lot of anti-government sentiment. It's hard for people to always appreciate the regulators and the people that work for government. And then third, finally, we got to figure out some ways to transform services, to get upstream and change the course of things. We're never going to be able to keep taxes down if we can't keep people out of jail and people out of trouble.
Ms. Pleasant, besides the pandemic, what do you see as the most important issues facing Scott County?
I believe that keeping taxes low is very important. There's a lot of people out there that think that taxes are going to just keep rising year after year after year, and obviously our citizens can't afford that. So we need to find ways to make our government more efficient and do things where we can work with the townships and the cities to buy more as a group and be able to be very efficient in everything that we do so that we can keep our tax rates low. Another thing is, working on bringing businesses to Scott County, whether they're large businesses, the cities, or small businesses, and lessening some of the restrictions and the loopholes that people have to go through to bring a new business into our county. And part of that is also supporting our current businesses and making sure they stay open and they have the funding and the support that they need. Thank you.
This next question is to Ms. Brecky. What do you see as the most important issues or the highest priorities for your own district?
Thank you, Michael. My district is District 1, which includes the cities of Belle Plaine, Jordan, the Scott County part of New Prague, Precinct 5 of Shakopee, and 7 townships. The most important issues in District 1 really are transportation, the road and bridge infrastructure. I think one of the most impactful things that just happened is the completion of the 16941 project, and now we have our eyes on the 282-169 County Road 9 project. We need to figure out how to work with our federal and state partners, get some funding and get that project underway, because that last stoplight creates safety issues, creates timing issues for people trying to move through our county and for businesses trying to move throughout. As we do that, we got to work on the transportation infrastructure on either side in Sand Creek Township, and in St. Lawrence Township, and make sure that we have a safe corridor for the people who live here, for the businesses that have their businesses here, and for the people traveling through.
And Ms. Pleasant, what do you see as the highest priorities for your own district?
My district is District 2, which includes Credit River, Cedar Lake, Spring Lake, New Market Townships, and then also the city of Elko New Market and precincts 2 and 3 in Prior Lake. And from talking to the people in my community, I feel like some of the concerns are zoning and smart zoning. There's nobody who doesn't want development. Everybody wants development, but we need to have a clear-cut plan on where we're going to develop and where we're going to allow to still be rural in our community. And I think also that a lot of my constituents' concerns are also COVID and in keeping businesses open. So that's what I've heard the most out there in the community. Thank you.
And Mr. Wolf, what do you see as the highest priorities for your district?
Well, thank you. Businesses, bringing those in, keeping our businesses running, keeping us farmers going. Excuse me, I have allergies, but keeping the businesses running in our townships are the biggest thing, so that people are making money, you know, paying for their food, whatever that they have going on in life. Keeping our road infrastructure up is a big thing to keep those businesses rolling. That's almost the number one thing. And also, people in my district want to keep the rural feel that we have. They like the open space, they like the quiet, and they just like how the whole ambiance of the whole thing. And those are the biggest three in my area.
Ms. Pleasant, are there any areas where you believe Scott County should either increase or decrease spending?
I think we could decrease spending in a lot of places. I think we need to take a hard look at staffing for the county and making sure that we're staffing smartly. I actually have a degree in human resources, and I run a staffing firm, and I understand a lot about how much we should pay for salaries and things like that and benefits. So not that we want to cut those for our people, but make sure that we're spending the money where we need to. There's certain services maybe we don't need anymore, and other services we need more of. For instance, I've heard a lot that we need more mental health funds, and I think that's a great way to spend our money, because that also, having mental health infrastructure helps our police force and helps our whole community. So I would say spending more there, and then keeping our police funded where it's at is very important to me too, because I feel like that's a thing that a lot of communities are talking about cutting, and I think that Scott County does a great job right now, and I don't want to cut it. Thank you.
Mr. Wolf, where should Scott County increase or decrease spending?
Well, we're constantly monitoring all of our departments, and with our meetings, and I meet with all the department heads, all the department managers, and see where we can excuse me, where we can do better, where we can cut, what's working, what's not. And so we're always looking at that. We currently have like a kind of a hard, not real hard, but hiring freeze on, and that's saving us some money during this time. But sorry about these allergies. But so we're looking at things as they come up to us and taking care of them as they go there. Thank you.
And Ms. Brecky, where should the county increase or decrease spending?
Thank you, Michael. I agree with Commissioner Wolf. What I've learned over the past 4 years is the county board and administration works very hard every year on this budget. A couple of things are done to make sure we can decrease funding when available, is we make sure that we're not leaving any money on the table. We're all taxpayers, and a lot of our money goes to the federal government and the state government. We want to make sure we're getting back as much as possible for our transportation projects and other things. Second, I think it's okay sometimes to increase funding on things that are going to save us a lot of money later. I think the board's done some innovative things in the last years, things like treatment court and veterans court, trying to give opportunities, special services to folks who are in our criminal justice system, helping them get on their feet so they stay out of our criminal justice system. And that will allow us to end up cutting budgets in other places if we can just do that. So I'm looking for those opportunities to save money long-term and down the road.
Mr. Wolf, what are your long-term goals for business and economic development?
The biggest thing we can do for them is have infrastructure, whether it's the sewer, the water, the roads, the transportation. They need that. That's the number one thing they look for, whether it's in Elko New Market, Shakopee, Jordan. Can they get their goods onto interstates or big roads? That's the best thing they can do. Also, we need a workforce here. They need workers, and if you don't have those, they're not going to locate here. Also, we have to have it where the taxes and the cost of doing business makes sense to do business here. So we need to juggle all those things to help them locate here in Scott County. Thank you.
Ms. Brecky, what are your long-term goals regarding business and economic development?
I think the long-term goals from the county's perspective is to be a convener, to work with the cities, with the townships, with entities like the Chamber to make sure we're a good, attractive county to do business in. Some of that is infrastructure. It's probably the first layer of things that are needed, the roads, sewer systems, broadband, which we've invested a lot in lately. The workforce is important, and the county's been looking at that. It's troubling to know that less than 2/3 of our third grade students are reading at grade level. That's kind of a warning sign for us in the future about our workforce. That's not necessarily the county's role, but we can get together with our schools and other entities to see if we can have some improvement in that area. And then third, we need to get out of the way. Let businesses do business. Let's get rid of barriers, get rid of extra fees and things that are needed to do business. And I think we are constantly looking at ways to get out of the way of business, let it happen, and make this a better place even to live and do business.
And Ms. Pleasant, what are your long-term goals for business and economic development here in Scott County?
I actually agree with the other two commissioners on a lot of the things they've said. These are things I've heard from a lot of people in the community, that we have to have the infrastructure, we have to have the internet, but we also have to have the resources and the people. And one thing is, we have a lot of people commuting into the city right now, and we need to make it attractive for them to stay here by shorter commutes, and providing, if we have the jobs here, they will come. So recruiting the businesses and working with the chambers and the city councils and the townships to make sure that we're providing the necessary incentives and trying to attract the businesses, I think our people will stay here, and then we can also provide some training programs. Right now, we do have people that would probably take advantage if we had some better training programs to get some people some better skills, and tell them that if they're willing to work in our communities, we will provide that for them. Thank you.
Moving on to the next question. Ms. Brecky. Yes, go ahead.
I decided we might as well use these. It's not very contentious up here. So somewhat of a rebuttal, somewhat of a comment. I want to say that what I've been hearing from businesses lately is that they are having trouble hiring workers. And that's a big deal. We think in this time of COVID that there should be lots of people looking for work, but in truck drivers, landscapers, other people, they're having trouble finding workers. So it's the work is here, the jobs are here in Scott County, and we all need to work together to do a better job promoting those. And then people maybe will stay here and not be driving out of the county. But I think a lot of progress has been made in the last decade about making sure and trying to entice people to work closer to home. And I think with what's going on with COVID, maybe we'll see even more of that.
Ms. Brecky, in light of current events, recent events across the country, do you believe any changes are needed here in local law enforcement?
Thank you. It's a really good question. I think that's something we're all talking about at our kitchen tables and our businesses and with our friends. First of all, I think Scott County Sheriff's Department, our police departments in Scott County have really done a good job. They're out on the forefront on training for dealing with mental health crises. They've done those things proactively before it's become big news. So I really support those efforts for those departments to continue that training, to continue evolving and doing their work well. One way the county can help is by adding systems and infrastructure to make it so that law enforcement doesn't have to do things they're not supposed to do and not trained to do. For example, dealing with mental health crises. We've invested more time, energy, and money in making sure we have mobile crisis response here in Scott County and providing that to folks. And from what I've heard and what our sheriff tells me is often that team goes out without law enforcement. Those are kind of steps in the right direction.
Ms. Pleasant, in light of recent events across the country, do you believe any changes are needed in local law enforcement?
I think we need to keep up with what we're doing. Our sheriff's department and our city's police departments seem to be doing a very good job from everything I've been hearing. I think that actually some people think they should even be tougher. But I think that for us, I think keeping up with the training and what they're already doing, because I feel like they do a great job in de-escalating, but also keeping up with our mental health services so that the police and the sheriff's department are expected to deal with every one of those situations is very important. But definitely, we definitely need to keep supporting them and keep behind them. Thank you.
And Mr. Wolf, in light of recent events, do you believe any changes are needed in local law enforcement?
No, and, you know, I'm going to agree with both of the ladies up here. I think we're doing a great job with law enforcement. We're giving the tools to the county, the money they need for, we had some cameras that we're getting in. We are staffed properly. Our jail, our numbers are down on the inmates a little bit right now, which is a good thing, but we got to keep law enforcement, and we got to keep on monitoring that situation and make sure that we're protecting people. They expect that, and we have to keep it. Thank you.
Ms. Pleasant, a substantial portion of the budget in Scott County is allocated to human services and helping with things such as opioid addiction and mental health issues. In your opinion, what programs here in Scott County have been successful, and what opportunities are there for improvement?
Thank you. I think what we're doing currently is actually working quite well, but I feel like we need to keep working in that same direction and add more to that. There's so many people that are suffering, especially with the new challenges we faced in the last 6 to 8 months with COVID. We have to think about people's, not just their health, but also their mental health and their fiscal health. And I think that if we keep funding mental health programs, that we're doing a great job with that, but we need to see where we can do it better too. Thank you.
Commissioner Wolf, in this area of health and human services, what programs do you see as successful, and where is there room for improvement?
Well, then, that's one of those areas that's, a lot of that is mandated by the state, but recently we set up a treatment court for drug offenders and a veterans court for veterans that is actually showing some positive signs. These people are getting a second chance. They're working with some of our judges. Judge Chris Wilton is one of them, and they're coming out of that very good. That's a really good success story. Thank you.
And Ms. Brecky, what areas of the Health and Human Services program in Scott County do you think have been successful, and what areas need improvement?
Thank you, Michael, and it's important. We've already all talked about how most of what we do and almost everything that Scott County does with human services, we're mandated to do. We're doing a good job being efficient in that area because in the whole state, we're always in the top 1, 2, or 3 of the counties who spend the least money and the least levy money per capita on human services. Yet we deliver the services that are needed. I like to remind people, too, that much of that budget goes to our friends and neighbors who have serious disabilities and cannot live independently, and to our senior citizens who need long-term care run out of their own assets. A lot of folks forget that part of our human services budget and how big part of that budget is. What can we do better? We're administering these mandated programs according to these federal and state guidelines that sometimes can be onerous and difficult, and we need to break down those barriers for our citizens. Just today, I was working with a family where a daughter has had a serious accident, and they're really frustrated trying to get those services. So we can do better at breaking down those barriers, working with our state and federal partners, and helping people get what they need.
And if I could use an orange card here, thank you.
Yes, go ahead.
You know, this comes down to, like Barb said, this is a state-federal issue. We need to work with our state senators, state representatives, United States senators, Congress people, relieve some of these mandates and give us a little more freedom to do our jobs and take some of the shackles off, so to speak, because it's you know, costs us a lot of money to do some of this stuff, and we look at it and say, boy, this could be done a lot better and a lot cheaper if we could just do it how we would like to do it. So, thank you.
Mr. Wolf, the next question starts with you. More than 20% of Scott County residents or households pay 30% or more of their income toward housing. This is considered cost-burdened and may make it more difficult for them to afford other necessities. What do you see as the role of Scott County in providing housing?
Well, at this point, we're looking at a couple different options with Beacon for some housing. We also have, we work hand in hand with the CDA, the Community Development Agency, we've put up a couple of workforce type of housing units that's helped a lot of people get into some affordable housing. And that does make a difference. You have to have affordable housing. These people need to feel safe and secure in a home, and that they will do better at their jobs if they have that. Thank you.
Ms. Brecky, what do you see as the county's role in providing housing?
First of all, the county's role is not to provide housing. That's not something a county does, and that's not something that probably most of our citizens want us to do. But I do see that we have a role as a partner in that effort. We're a convener. We work with the CDA, we work with cities, we work with businesses to try and eliminate some of those barriers to make housing more affordable, to try and create a vibrant economic economy so that people are making more money and can afford that housing. And then finally, those things that Commissioner Wolf just talked about, really looking at those parts of the population who, because of disability or other issues, can't access sufficient, safe, stable housing. And I think our recent efforts in working with nonprofits to try and get them to invest in our community with us, are the right way to go. So we're not going to solve the issue, but we're going to continue making progress.
And Ms. Pleasant, what do you see as the county's role in the area of housing?
I agree with Commissioner Brecky that it's not our job to provide housing, but it is our job to partner with other agencies to make sure that people are well taken care of. No one wants homeless people in their community, and it's our job to provide places for people to work so they can afford the housing that they need and live a safe and healthy life. I also think that we could do a good job of keeping property taxes down. So people who do own apartment buildings and people who are trying to pay for properties their property taxes aren't being increased every year, year over year, so they can't afford to live in that in our communities. Thank you.
Moving to the next topic, Ms. Brecky, the quality of our transportation system affects safety and also economic development in Scott County. What areas of the county do you think are in the greatest need of transportation investments, speaking in terms of geographic areas or particular roads or bridges?
Thank you, Michael. Good question. County roads, county bridges are just foundational work and responsibilities of the county. We've done a good job and made a lot of progress in the last couple years, and I will say right off the bat, I can't take credit for that. It takes years and years of planning to assemble that funding and create those projects. I think we've done a good job. Scott County and everybody involved has done a good job focusing on those intersections, those segments of road that are the most traveled and need the most safety improvements to be made. So I think continuing on that, I think we need to work on 282, 169 County Road 9 and the frontage and backage roads to connect that. We need to make sure that the plans for 13 at the Port of Savage get done. We need to push our federal and state partners to make that a safer area, an area of less congestion and better economic activity. And then finally, we need to keep up. We need to keep up and keep our roads and bridges in good shape.
Ms. Pleasant, what areas of Scott County do you believe are in the greatest need of transportation investment?
I think we've done a really good job with implementing a lot of roundabouts recently, and I've heard a lot of positives from our community members that it's kept traffic flowing and it's doing a good job. I think we could actually use a few more. There's an area in my township, in Spring Lake Township, that at 23 and 220, where 220 is not a straight across street, and it's a very dangerous area. It's high traffic, and people are trying to cross kind of in a jagged line. So that's a great place that we could hopefully invest and eventually put a roundabout. And then also speeding up the 282, 169 intersection, or interchange, sorry, that it's very dangerous right now, and we need to get that done as soon as possible. Thank you.
And Mr. Wolf, what areas of Scott County do you believe are in the greatest need of transportation investment?
Well, as a commissioner, you always say, your district is the one that needs the most money. So, but having said that, we're not on an island when it comes to transportation. And we know we need to move things all across the county and get things to and from places, get people to and from places. The half-cent sales tax we put in 2015 has funded a lot of projects that have helped out all over the county. It's really been a great investment. We got the 41-169 overpass bridge that saves semi-truck drivers, some of them 6 minutes. I've talked to them, and and it's such a great thing. They don't have to hit their brakes and start up again. It saves them a gallon of fuel. That's going to be really a great thing. I'm on what's called the I-35 Solutions Committee, and so we're looking for solutions for I-35 and how to make that faster and better, just for everybody to move along so people can get to work, get freight across the state, and get things done. Thank you.
Ms. Pleasant, in your view, how does public transit fit in the picture here in Scott County?
Just to clarify, like public transport as trains and busing and things like that, right?
Yes, thinking of things like public buses or public trains.
I think it's very important, and I think that we need to have the speed buses that go straight downtown so that we can get people delivered to where we need to. But hopefully, we also encourage people to work and live in our communities to actually work in our communities. I think we have quite a few park and rides, and I've really not heard a lot of complaints about people not being able to find that kind of opportunity for us. Thank you.
Mr. Wolf, in your view, how does public transit fit in Scott County?
It plays a big part with Scott County. We do have some places where people can get on buses to and from work. I'm not a big train fan, but one thing with this whole COVID thing, we found out that people can work at home. And by working at home, we've taken a lot of cars and a lot of buses and whatever off of the road, making things more efficient for people that are out there. So if we get more broadband, that actually helps out the road situation. My wife, for one, she works at Wells Fargo. She hasn't been into work since March 15th. She's been working at home the entire time. So you take all those road trips off the highway, it really helps the system work very good. Thank you.
And Ms. Brecky, what is your view of public transit in Scott County?
Thank you. Public transit's important, but I think in our county, a suburban and somewhat rural county, really the investment in roads, bridges, and that type of transportation infrastructure is most important. We are an opt-out county, which means we take the funds that could have been part of the larger regional picture, and we work with Minnesota Valley Transit Authority on those express buses to Minneapolis. The thing that I think has been really important is that Scott County's worked with some of our biggest local employers to have them buy in and support transit options because they're the ones who really benefit from it too. Finally, I think Scott County, we have some mandated responsibility and some that we've taken on to help folks who are disabled, elderly, that type of thing, have some public transportation. And one thing the board did and is funding is that after hours and weekend dial-a-ride service, which ends up helping a lot of folks who even live in rural areas make sure they can get to doctor's appointments, other things like that. When there's no other options. I think we need to continue to work on this because there's lots of options with Uber and Lyft that we may be able to save some money and still give people those services.
Commissioner Wolf, MCA testing shows that more than 1/3 of children in Scott County are not proficient readers by the end of 3rd grade. This is considered a key developmental milestone and also a predictor of future success. What do you see as Scott County's role in helping with childhood literacy?
Well, we have a limited role, but we can play a role. We have set up a bus with books on it. But getting back to what you said, and this is a big thing, has been a big issue for me, is we need kids to read. We need them to read a lot. We need the parents to help out. It starts out at home. And however we can do that and get kids up to a reading level by 3rd grade, I know I have 4 boys, and I had one of them who, we thought he was getting some help at school, wasn't, and so we spent the next 3 years and a lot of money getting his reading to where it should be. So it's an important issue. It's something that everybody has to buy into, not just people with kids or without. It has to be everybody. This is a big thing. Literacy is huge, so thank you.
Ms. Brecky, what do you see as the county's role in this area of childhood literacy?
Thanks, Michael. I'm excited and passionate about this topic and serve on the Live, Learn, Earn Educational Preparedness Subcommittee. So I've been working on it steadily, but acknowledge that the county's role is limited. I think our role, again, is to be working with our school partners, our business partners, and others to tackle this issue. From the county perspective, we got to remember we often see kids and interact with kids before they go to school. It might be through our library programs, it might be through some of our human services programs, and we want to make sure that tools are in place to help families make sure their kids are ready for school, to identify barriers and disabilities that maybe if some help can be achieved before kindergarten, those kids are going to be more ready to learn, and just to provide resources along with our school districts. So we're working on that. The Read Mobile that Commissioner Wolf mentioned is up and running and has been to some neighborhoods working on those types of things with young children and their families. And we do have a new pilot project coming out with some donations of some e-readers that'll be going to families with young children as they go through the screening process. So we're going to keep working on it, and we're going to make some progress.
And Ms. Pleasant, what do you see as the county's role to help children with learning to read?
Thank you. I see that it's a limited, we have a limited role because we're not actually the school districts, but we also have a role in supporting them and partnering with businesses and helping with human health services to define where people do need the help. If family members do have disabilities or the parents have disabilities and they can't help their children, we need to step in and help in those areas. And I do think it does begin at home, and we need to make sure that everybody has what they need. Thank you.
And a final question. Ms. Brecky, what skills and experience do you bring as a county commissioner, and what makes you the best candidate for your district?
Thank you. First off, I have a passion for Scott County. This is my home. This is where I've raised my kids, and this is probably where I'll live for hopefully a very long time yet. I really care about this county. I want to see businesses thrive, families enjoy their lives here, and for there to be a lot of opportunities here. I've enjoyed my 4 years as a commissioner. I've learned a lot. And I've identified areas where we can do better. In my professional life, I am an attorney, so I bring that knowledge and expertise to the board as I look at projects and things like that. But I think really it's my passion, it's my care and concern for my friends and neighbors and for all of Scott County, and my continued quest to let's just improve and do better. So I'm excited for another term. I think I am the best candidate. It's too bad my opponent was not here tonight.
And Ms. Pleasant, what skills and experience would you bring to the commission, and why do you believe you're the best candidate to represent your district?
I think as county commissioner, our role is to be a voice for the people and to listen to the people and talk to the businesses and the chamber and the city councils and the township, and really find out what people want and need, and then be able to listen to them and be able to speak for them. I think I bring a fresh perspective to the role. I have not been a county commissioner before. I have not held office, but I think that's in a way a positive. Even though there might be things we've tried in the past, maybe we can tweak them and try new things. I own a business myself. I own an IT staffing firm, and then my husband owns a construction firm, and then we own a small family farm. So we have a very unique stance of understanding what farmers are going through, what business owners are going through, and we really have a passion for helping people, and I really want to dedicate myself to this. Thank you.
And Mr. Wolf, what skills and experience do you bring to the commission, and why do you believe you're the best candidate from your district?
Thank you. I was a financial advisor for 12 years. I also worked at Minnesota Harvest. It's an apple orchard here in Scott County. And having done those things, I'm connected to a lot of the county. I have volunteered with the Chamber of Commerce. I volunteer with the Lions, the Knights of Columbus. I've been in the commercial club in Jordan. So I know a lot of people in this county, not just in my district. I've lived here almost my whole life. I raised my family here. My dad raised us here. His mom and dad, we've been here since the 1800s. And finally, I care. I care about Scott County. Thank you.
Our time is running out. Anyone whose questions have not been answered in our time here tonight should feel free to contact the candidates or their campaign offices. You can also find out more about them on the Shakopee Chamber's website on the elections page, including the videos with interviews with the candidates. Each candidate will now have 1 minute for their closing statements, and we will go in alphabetical order, beginning with Commissioner Brecky.
Thank you, Michael, and I'd like to thank you and the Shakopee Chamber of Commerce for facilitating this event, allowing us this opportunity to talk to the voters and residents of Scott County. It's a difficult year to do that, so this is really appreciated. My closing statement is, I've said this my whole term, and I'll continue to say it. We are all Scott County. Scott County isn't the Board of Commissioners. It's not the people that work there. It's not the guys that drive the snowplow. It's all of us. We're on the same team. And the more we can all be on the same team in our county, with our cities, with our chambers, with our state representatives, we're going to do better. I think teamwork is really important, and working together to solve these issues is going to get us to a better place, and I will continue to work to do that. So thank you for the opportunity to serve, and I look forward to serving Scott County residents for the next couple of years.
And Ms. Pleasant, your closing statement.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Shakopee Chamber of Commerce, and thank you, Shakopee High School, for hosting this event tonight. I think that what's very important about the county commissioner role is to be there and be partnering with the communities and the cities and the townships and the businesses and the different chambers so that we can provide what we need to provide for our people. I also think that we could do a better job than we currently do in communicating with people. One of the things I've heard over and over again is sometimes people have no idea where to go to. Like, is this a township problem, a city problem, a county problem, a state problem? And I think one thing we could do is provide some communication, whether it's an online presence or something where it's not just a Scott County website, but something like our scale meetings where we actually all work together to provide that kind of information so everybody understands who to go to when they need help. Thank you.
And Commissioner Wolf.
Can you say the question again? Go.
Please share your closing statement.
Okay, thank you. So thank you to everybody here. I enjoy and appreciate the job here. It's a privilege to be a Scott County Commissioner. And, you know, I don't want to throw anybody on the bus, but we throw out a lot of information in this county. There's newspapers, there's Facebook. We have the Scott County scene. Most of our meetings are online. I go and I meet with our township chair people, our city mayors, monthly, weekly. I talk to them. Just met with the mayor or the soon-to-be mayor, the chair of the Credit River Board at a big community gathering out in Credit River Township the other night. And, you know, people think there's a lot of communication out there. I always tell people that, you know, why do I want to do it or whatever? And I say, well, I love the job and I'd like to continue. I think that I've earned that right. So thank you.
As we close this part of our discussion, please remember that the views shared tonight are those of the candidates and not the views of the Chamber of Commerce and Visitors Bureau. The Chamber sponsors this event as a service to the community, and we've gone to great lengths to be objective. We do not endorse any candidate. Instead, we seek to provide businesses and voters in Shakopee with the information that the voters need to make informed decisions. We also want to thank the Shakopee High School for hosting our event. On behalf of the Shakopee Chamber and Visitors Bureau, thank you to all of our candidates. It was very nice sharing this time with you tonight. We appreciate your time and your service to our community. And to the public, Election Day is Tuesday, November 3rd. Please remember to vote. We will now take a brief intermission as we prepare the candidates for Minnesota House District 55A. Thank you and good night. Good evening and welcome to the 2020 Minnesota House District 55A Candidate Forum. This is sponsored by the Shakopee Chamber and Visitors Bureau and hosted here at Shakopee High School. My name is Michael Clem. I'm an attorney at Helmuth & Johnson and a member of the Chamber, and I'm serving as the moderator this evening. All candidates for Minnesota House District 55A were invited to participate, and with us this evening are Mr. Eric Mortensen and Representative Brad Tabke. The candidates are arranged in alphabetical order. Candidates have already recorded video interviews to introduce themselves to the community if you were not familiar with them. And so those are available for viewing on the Chamber's website on the elections page. The candidates will not be giving opening statements. We'll be moving right into the questions tonight. Tonight, the candidates will be asked a series of questions, and they will have 60 seconds to respond. They also will have 2 opportunities to provide rebuttals of up to 30 seconds each. As a moderator, I'm also allowed to ask follow-up questions, in which case they will have 30 seconds to respond. The first question this evening is directed to Mr. Mortensen. How should the legislature respond to the state budget deficit this coming year?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's unfortunate the actions of our governor and his overreaction to this COVID pandemic put us in this mess. And I wish we just blamed the virus itself, but the instant the governor and Brad Tabke here rubber stamped everything he's been doing, it's him to blame. So I think the way we should look at this is it's about a 5% budget deficit. And I know as a business person, if you were to go to any of the business owners in Shakopee and say, after this whole COVID ordeal is over, what would you think if you only missed your budget revenue by 5%? And they would be ecstatic. They would be doing cartwheels in the streets about it, because I've been talking to the business owners in town, and they're getting hammered right now. They're down 20, 30, 40% in revenue. So it's simple. We just need to go back to 2017 spending levels.
Mr. Tabke, how do you believe that the state legislature should respond to the budget deficit?
Thank you so much. And first, I just want to say thank you very much to the Chamber. Thank you, Michael, for being moderator tonight. Thank you, Angie, for putting this together. And thanks to Public Policy Committee for all the work that you guys do to make sure that Shakopee and Shakopee residents are informed as to what's happening in the elections here in our community. And so with the question, the economic issues that we're having in the state of Minnesota right now are going to be the #1 thing that we are working on throughout the 2021, 2022 sessions to get Minnesota back where we were just a few short months ago, and so to pull everything back together again. And so we had really good news yesterday that the deficit isn't as bad as we thought it was going to be. We're starting to make some progress and businesses are getting back together. So, but it's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to take a lot of people building relationships, a lot of people working together to have a balance of different things between expenses, cutting expenses, as well as raising revenue. So there's going to be a lot of work that has to get done, and people have to work together and find compromises to get there.
Mr. Tabke, do you support business closures or business occupancy restrictions during this COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah, this is one of the most important things that we've got going on right now is a solid balance between the economy and keeping people safe is really, really critical. So I'm extremely proud of where we're at today. It has taken us a long time, a long ways to get here, and if you look at what's happening in Minnesota compared to Wisconsin, compared to Iowa, compared to South Dakota, North Dakota, with where they're at for COVID cases right now and deaths, which they're skyrocketing all the states around us, we're doing a good job of keeping people in the state of Minnesota safe, and then when you balance that with the fact that we're having better than expected economic results as we got yesterday from that news, we are headed in the right direction. Now, I'm really proud of the work that we've done together with Governor Walz, but also we've worked and pushed back on a lot of different things that he has been doing through the COVID crisis that we're dealing with. This is a pandemic, and Shakopee residents understand that we're there and want to work together to find solutions.
Mr. Mortensen, do you support business closures or business occupancy restrictions during the COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah, that is a challenging issue, and it's really the most challenging issue of, it's really 2020. But I have to say, Brad, you haven't stood up to Tim Walz at all. You voted 7 times to consolidate all power in the state to one person. 7 times. There's been no pushback, and I'm surprised to hear these proud of this supposed balanced approach. This has not been a balanced approach. This has been a very heavy-handed government response We have 650,000 Minnesotans that are jobless. We have thousands of businesses that are lost, probably forever. But in the peak of all this, Brad voted for a pay raise for state employees. 50,000 state employees received a pay raise to the tune of $444 million. This has not been a balanced approach. We should be trusting people by informing them of the best practices and putting our trust in people to behave appropriately.
Mr. Mortensen, what do you believe should be done to control the spread of COVID-19 in Minnesota?
Sure. Well, look, what we have right now, I just said it, the state and Brad Tapke and our Governor Tim Walz refuse to put their trust in the people. The state's role is not to mandate behavior, it's not to mandate something in your face. The state's role is to protect our rights and to inform us with what we've learned about this virus and put the trust in the people to behave appropriately. Nobody's interested in death. I'm not interested in dying. I'm not interested in killing other people. So we should put our faith in the people. And when our elected leaders, like Brad and Governor Walz, refuse to put their trust in the people, it makes the people no longer trust them.
Mr. Tabke, what do you believe should be done to better control the spread of COVID-19 here in Minnesota?
Thank you, and I'll reiterate the fact again that I'm extremely proud of where we have gotten to today. If you look at the states around Minnesota, what we're doing today is working. It's not perfect, it's not great, it's not meeting every single need that we have in the state, but it is working on doing one of the number one things that the state has to do, is to keep the people of Minnesota safe, and that is one of our main jobs that we must do as a state, and we're working together to get that done. As well, the people of Shakopee understand that this is a pandemic. We are in a crisis today. This is something that we must continue to work together on. My opponent has thwarted mask mandates. Masks are scientifically proven to be making sure that we are not spreading COVID, that we are making sure that we're keeping our friends and keeping our neighbors safer. We are making sure that we are doing that together. And it's critical that we wear masks. It's critical that we lead and wash our hands. It's critical that we maintain distance throughout as we're working together in groups. So it's a really important thing, and we'll continue to work on this together.
And Mr. Mortensen, I believe you have a rebuttal.
I do. You know, this whole entire COVID thing, he talked about masks have been proven scientifically to do something. The CDC just came out, I think it was yesterday, and showed that 85% of the new cases over the month of July came from people who always wear their masks. So there's all sorts of other research out there that shows that that is simply not a fact.
Mr. Tabke, what do you believe should be the respective roles of the state legislature and the governor with respect to the pandemic?
Yeah, thank you for this. So as has been mentioned, obviously, we have been in a peacetime emergency. And the way that Minnesota's laws are structured is that the peacetime emergency can be renewed every 30 days. And so all 50 states in the United States, plus the federal government, are in the middle of a peacetime emergency right now. So we're not alone in the fact that we have a peacetime emergency in the state of Minnesota. Everybody is handling this and doing it in what is right for their state. And so with that, the state of Minnesota, we need to renew a peacetime emergency every 30 days, and the governor can only do that if the legislature is in session in order to have that balance. And so we've been working together. I'm really with the governor, and so as I said before, I've been working with the governor's office on making sure that we are taking care of retailers. When the retail changes happened was because a bunch of legislators worked together with the governor's office to say, hey, we need to make sure that we're opening these up, make sure that we are opening up golf courses and different things like that as we've gone forward.
And Mr. Mortensen, what do you believe should be the respective roles of the state legislature and the governor during a pandemic?
Well, first of all, the state legislature should be doing their job and exerting their constitutionally granted authority and having a voice in the process. Instead, Representative Tabke just punts all power to the governor. The legislative body is the only body that can create law in Minnesota. And all of the unconstitutional and illegal executive orders that Governor Walz has been advancing, they could all be done by the legislature. But they refuse to stand up and be our voice at the Capitol. And that's exactly what a representative is supposed to be, is representing our voice in St. Paul.
Michael.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Tabke.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that everyone is very clear that we have, in the state of Minnesota, there have been numerous lawsuits by folks that if Mr. Mortensen were elected, he would be working together with. Those numerous lawsuits have all been thrown out by judges throughout the state of Minnesota that the governor's peacetime emergency is in fact extremely legal and really beneficial to the state of Minnesota, that we are all working together and that we are all working to march forward so that we are getting this COVID handled and so that we can emerge on the economy on the other side. So that we need to make sure that people have confidence in our economy, that people are confident in going to Turtles and eating, that people are confident in going and buying clothes at Bill's Toggery, and then making sure that we are doing those things to restore confidence in our economy as we see it today. That's what we need to do to make sure that we have as many people coming out on the other side of this as whole as possible, that people are in their homes, they have their jobs, and we have as many businesses that are still successful, functioning, and employing many people in the state of Minnesota and Shakopee.
Mr. Mortensen, research shows that we have a persistent achievement gap for students from disadvantaged backgrounds. What should the state do to help close this achievement gap?
Sure, well, I remember talking about this 2 years ago, and it's funny to me how you go back and you look at these debates from 2018, 2016, 2014, how often these same topics come up. And as I look at this, it seems to be a refusal for people in St. Paul and Washington, D.C. for this matter, to get anything done and actually tackle any of these issues. So I remember my answer from 2 years ago, so it hasn't changed now. When I walked the halls at Highview with the management over there, they're so proud of the fact that they were able to control their store at a local level. And that's what I would advocate for schools, is more control at the local level instead of these state mandates.
And Mr. Tabke, what do you believe the state should do to help close Minnesota's achievement gap?
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, that is a really, really important thing. In the state of Minnesota, many people don't understand that we are one of the #1 places in the United States and in the world to raise families. We are rated constantly at the top of the list of places to raise families and to have children is in the state of Minnesota. On the flip side of that, we are constantly rated in the bottom 1, 2, or 3 of families of color for their success and their ability to be to raise their children and places to raise children. And so that is unconscionable to me. We must continue to work together. And so in the legislature this past 2 years, we have passed a significant number of laws. Many of them got signed by the governor. Many of the more important ones did not get to because they did not get through the Senate. But we need to make sure that we are hiring teachers of color so that we are helping people of color become teachers and teaching our next generations. That's a really important piece of it. We need to make sure to have a combination of other work together to make sure that as kids are young and successful that they are growing up. I'll finish in the next question.
Mr. Tabke, next question to you. Should the state regulate the purchase of firearms by individuals? And if so, what types of regulations are appropriate?
Got it, thank you. Yes, back to education real quick, and I will absolutely answer this question. Education is one of the #1 things the state does, and we need to make sure that we are taking care of our youngest generation and also making sure that we are giving opportunity to succeed to everyone in the state of Minnesota. We deserve to have a world-class education, and we must fully fund schooling, which we did a lot in this last session. And so, but for firearms, there are, in the legislature, we passed 2 things. One was expanding background checks, as well as a second one was red flag laws. I voted for both of those because they are not onerous on gun owners whatsoever, but they also make sure to take care and have a balanced approach on how we are handling gun ownership in the state of Minnesota, as well as focusing on the fact that, especially with red flag laws, that they dramatically have been proven in other states to reduce suicide by firearms, especially on farmers and veterans are 2 of the major groups that are committing suicide today, and this is a really good way to get at that problem.
Mr. Mortensen, do you believe that the state should regulate the purchase of firearms by individuals or not? And if so, what type of regulation would be appropriate?
Sure, well look, the sale of firearms is already regulated. And I have my fair share of firearms, and every time I go, I've got to fill out that background check form. But I can't help but notice that Brad is such a huge advocate of red flag gun seizure laws. What red flag gun seizure laws does is it takes away somebody's property before they've ever even committed, or they have never committed nor even charged with a crime. So we're taking away people's due process rights when we advocate for red flag gun laws. But it's not a shock because the Legislative Evaluation Assembly scorecard just came out this past week, and this body, it's a nonpartisan body. They're not Republicans, they're not Democrats. All this body cares about is adherence to the founding principles of our country. In other words, do lawmakers vote in line with the Constitution? And Mr. Tabke's lifetime scorecard came out, and he's at 15%. That means 85% of the time, he votes against the U.S. and state constitutions.
Mr. Mortensen, in your view, what is the most important issue facing the state of Minnesota now?
At this moment in time, I think it's these emergency powers. That Tabke has voted 7 times to consolidate all power with one man. That is not the American way. That's not how we do things here. That's not the America that I want my children to live in. We should be giving equal responsibility and equal power to all 3 branches of government, not having our voice stripped away as a community when our state representative, who's supposed to be our voice, refuses to assert himself and instead just gives all power to one person.
Mr. Tabke, what do you see as the most important issue facing the state?
Yeah, thank you, Michael. I see the most important issue facing our state right now as a combination of things. One, COVID, and making sure that we are taking care of people and the economy as we move forward, and making sure that we, like I said earlier, come out on the other side of this as healthy and as stable as we possibly can be. But that's really, really difficult for what you just saw from my opponent's answers, because divisiveness and just the absolute inability to work together as people is really, really frustrating. And people in Shakopee and people in the state of Minnesota are just tired of that type of rhetoric. They're tired of people not wanting to work together. And that starts at the top in the United States. And we need to make sure that we are working together. I've worked really hard with Senator Pratt, with Representative Albright, with folks across the aisle to get a lot of work done for Shakopee, from getting money for transportation, making sure that we are funding education, and a variety of different bills that people can find if they go to our website.
And Mr. Mortensen, I believe you have a rebuttal.
Yeah, I do. I'm glad that Brad touched on what people in Shakopee are tired of. Because what I hear people in Shakopee are tired of is Brad Tabke's refusal to listen to anybody. He just ramrods through whatever it is he thinks is best for us and refuses to listen to the community. And people are absolutely tired of that. He didn't listen about the community center when he was mayor. He's got a backdoor plan for the Spuck issue coming up, where he's going to strip our voices away again and try to advance a bill and just allow a simple majority of the city council to take over Spuck. He just repeatedly does not listen to the citizens of this community, and that's exactly what people are tired of.
Mr. Tabke, many individuals and businesses struggle to cover the high cost of health insurance. What do you believe is the best way to make healthcare affordable and accessible for all Minnesotans?
Thank you. Yeah, this is an absolutely critical thing. In 2018, this was one of the #1 issues that we talked about a lot, was healthcare. And I am a very big proponent of Medicare for All. There is a system that works really well in the state of Minnesota and the United States, and we should make sure that everybody has access to that system that's already working well. And so it is putting people out of business. It is stopping people from starting new businesses. It is making people quitting their jobs and being entrepreneurial a really difficult thing. And so we need to make sure as a state that we are supporting workers and making sure that we have a healthy workforce. More people go bankrupt from lack of health insurance than anything else in the state of Minnesota. And this is a problem that we must work together to fix.
Mr. Mortensen, in your view, what is the best way to make healthcare affordable and accessible for all Minnesotans?
Yeah, well, it is a great question, and I had to make a note that Brad said he's a big supporter of Medicare for All. When I said he was a supporter of Medicare for All 2 years ago, he said that wasn't true. So I don't know if he's lying now or lying then. But look, the issue with any of these industries where you see costs exploding, whether it's housing, whether it's education, whether it's healthcare, there's one common thing that they have, and that's the heavy hand of government is way more involved in these industries than most others. So if we're going to actually reduce the cost of healthcare, we need to address the state mandates in healthcare insurance policies, the Obamacare mandates. You know, 4 years ago, I remember in 2016, every Democrat across the country was running against Obamacare. They all knew it was a disaster. It increased premiums 300, 400%, and with incredibly high deductibles. There essentially was no coverage and no competition. And competition is the answer. We need more competition, we need more choice, and we need price transparency.
Mr. Mortensen, the next question's for you. According to the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce, Minnesota is among the 5 states with the highest income taxes, both for businesses and individuals in the whole country. Should Minnesota lower its income tax rates to be more competitive?
100%, absolutely. We're one of the top 5 highest tax states in the country, and these studies come out year after year. We're always in the top 5, maybe even higher. So what I want to push for is to make Minnesota, put us on the path of being a zero income tax state. So we'll start with tax cuts across all brackets, and at the same token, we're one of 13 states that still has a tax on Social Security income benefits. And that has a tremendous impact on our seniors. I door knock a lot, as people know, and I talk to seniors all the time who say they're just being driven out of this state. And it's sad, it's unfortunate, because their kids live here, their grandkids live here, and they're having to separate from their families because they just simply can't afford to live in Minnesota anymore.
Mr. Tabke, should Minnesota lower its income tax rates to be more competitive with other states?
Yeah, thank you, Michael. This is something I'm really happy to say and can agree with Mr. Mortensen on, is that we have, in 2019, in our budget that we passed in the state of Minnesota, we reduced a significant amount on Social Security for seniors, income tax on Social Security for seniors, so that is putting us on a path to continuing to reduce that. We'll have to see what 2021 brings, as we're in an economic concerns right now in the state of Minnesota. As well, we reduced the income tax in the state side on all income brackets in the state of Minnesota. So all of those things have happened, and so it's really important that we recognize what actually has gotten done. And so during my time as mayor, we worked really hard, as I'm hoping that many people know, to bring businesses to Shakopee. We needed to make sure that we are having as many high-wage job providers in our community as we possibly can. And we worked really hard with those folks, and we talked about taxes, and the effective tax rate of the state of Minnesota is very different from the high tax rates that other folks talk about. And so that's why we still have big businesses coming to Minnesota and being extremely successful here.
Mr. Tabke, how do you think the state should deal with traffic congestion in the Southwest Metro, specifically at the intersection of highways 169, 13, and 101?
Yeah, thank you for this question. It's one of the biggest issues in our community for sure. And so I am the vice chair of the Transportation Committee. And as vice chair of the Transportation Committee, we worked really hard on 2019 to find a solution for what we experience here in Shakopee every single day, of getting stuck on the bridge, sitting there and wasting time. Business time is lost, residents, commuter time is lost, and it's something that really has to get fixed. And so we passed a law, House File 1555, got passed, and what that would do is fund a lot of arterial bus rapid transit and min-pass lanes, so it would be expanding 169, going from Marshall Road up to Highway 55 and down into Minneapolis. And so we passed that bill, so that is a path forward for getting where we need to be. We need to have a balance of roads, bridges, and transit for the state of Minnesota. I also secured $250,000 of funding for the 495 bus route, which transports a lot of workers to and from Shakopee. So I'm really, really proud of that work, and hope we have more transportation questions.
Mr. Mortensen, how do you think we should deal with that congestion issue in the Southwest Metro, specifically on the bridge?
Sure. Well, I don't go back to taxes, because listening to Brad, it sounds like he's some big tax cutter, but the reality is the complete opposite. He's voted for every tax increase he ever could in his entire political career, and it's been a long one. He's increased taxes, he voted for sales tax increases, property tax increases, a 2% tax on the sick, a 70% gas tax increase that he has dubbed himself on the House floor. He wants to call it the Tabke tax, so I'll just start calling that the Tabke tax. He increased vehicle registration taxes. He voted for a $3 billion tax increase that even the Star Tribune, which is no conservative newspaper, came out with a study that said that $3 billion tax increase hits the lowest income earners the hardest in Minnesota. So don't let him fool you again to think that he's some sort of a tax cutter. And of course, we need to take action on 169 Bridge, but Brad touting his own horn over here, he's sent private emails to people that I know that he's admitted that actually was not in the bill.
Mr. Tabke, I understand you have a rebuttal.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know what most of that was that you're you're saying there because it's
All
just
your tax increases.
simply not true. And so
No, they are.
it will absolutely require, Minnesotans and Shakopee residents are smart folks. We understand that in order to get things done, it takes resources, it takes time, it takes energy. And so it takes commitment and political courage to do those kinds of things, to get what we need to get done in our community. And so I'm really proud to have set that path. Now, things that we passed in 2019, absolutely, we never expected everything from the different pieces for paid family medical leave, for different things to get passed and end up being in the final bills. And so that's part of legislating and that's part of working together that my opponent just doesn't understand. He would be part of a, unfortunately, if he were to be elected, he would be part of a small group of legislators that don't caucus with the Republican Party. It would be a separate party, and that just wouldn't be good for Shakopee because it takes a team and it takes people working together to get things done. And this is where we need to go, and I hope to have folks vote in order to continue that work.
Mr. Mortensen, what do you believe is the most significant transportation issue facing our community, and how do you believe it should be addressed?
Yeah, it's a good point, and it's a good question, but I have to go back again that Brad's saying none of these tax increases are true. Well, if follow my Facebook page tonight, I will be sure to share the truth with you, and I'm sure nobody watching this actually expects this man to be honest with them tonight because he hasn't been honest with this community his entire public service. And the short answer to your question is, I think it still remains to be seen. With the COVID impact and people staying at home and working from home, I think a lot of businesses are seeing that productivity hasn't really suffered. So I'm curious to see what happens in the long run, but I think we need to let behavior take point with this. And as we see, 169 is, of course, the obvious answer. And I expect that to probably be the obvious answer down the road, but I'm curious to see what impact, lasting impact, the COVID has had with people working from home.
And Mr. Tabke, what do you see as the most significant transportation issue facing our community, and how do you believe it should be addressed?
Yeah, thank you. The most significant transportation issue affecting our community is absolutely 169, and making sure that we are working together to get different solutions, and making sure Mr. Mortensen is absolutely correct that we are in a different era. We are going into a different economic era, and I'm really excited to go back to being Vice Chair of Transportation so we can work on those things, and so that we can work on making sure that we are balancing transit and transportation, that people have really good, solid options if they're going to go to Minneapolis, that we have a system as it's recovering and as we're going back into our economic success that we very much expect to be experiencing in the state of Minnesota, that as we're going back that direction, that we do it smartly, that we invest in ways that make the most sense for the people of Shakopee, and that we make sure that we're giving more time for families and more time for people to stay home with their kids and see their kids being raised and spend time with their grandkids because they're not sitting in traffic.
Changing topics now. Mr. Tabke, what should be the state minimum wage, and should communities be allowed to establish their own higher wage?
Thank you. Yeah, it is really important that we are making sure that all folks in Minnesota are taken care of. It's really clear to me that Minnesotans care for their neighbor, and they want all their neighbors and their friends and their families to be successful no matter at what level of income they are at. And so in Minnesota, we need to make sure to look at making sure that we are propping up the people who need the most in the state. And so there are many places where it makes sense that a $15 an hour minimum wage absolutely makes sense to make sure that families are able to pay all their bills, make sure that families are able to cover the costs that they have. Those types of things need to happen, but it can't be a one-size-fits-all solution. There needs to be making sure that we are handling different areas of the state differently if that makes sense for those areas. And so we will, and yes, absolutely, different locations. I'm very big on local control and feel that individual localities should be able to take and make sure that they are making decisions for their communities that are in their best interest.
Mr. Mortensen, in your view, what should be the state's minimum wage, and should communities be allowed to establish a higher minimum wage?
Yeah, well, look, when it comes to minimum wage, I like how Tabke used the word propping up, because that's exactly what this is. Anytime the state comes in to any good, any service, and artificially props up the price of that good or service, you get less of it. You know, the same case has been made repeatedly for, say, cigarettes. They've been taxed highly, and it's resulted in less smoking. And people like Brad would say that's exactly the impact. But yet, either they're intellectually dishonest or economically illiterate when they don't understand that that same economic principle, which is taught in any economics 101 class, applies to labor as well. And there's been many studies to show that. So I would keep the minimum wage where it's at, and I'm curious about his desire for local control and not having a one-size-fits-all approach. Yet he continuously rubber stamps Governor Walz's one-size-fits-all, heavy-handed approach to COVID.
Mr. Mortensen, in your view, should the state of Minnesota require paid family and medical leave, or should employers be free to develop their own wage and benefit packages?
Well, look, I mean, I'm a free market guy, and I'm a business guy. And so, no, the government has no business deciding and dictating what benefits employers must offer their employees. Employers have a built-in incentive to offer a competitive compensation package and benefits package to compete in the labor marketplace. So, no, I don't think the government has any role there.
And Mr. Tabke, do you believe that the state should require paid family and medical leave, or should employers develop their own benefit packages without state requirements?
Yes, absolutely. The state of Minnesota should require paid family medical leave. And so when this issue first started coming up in the legislature in 2019, I was sitting at the chamber annual meeting and talked to a group of, it was about 10 folks that were at Canterbury Park, and talking to them about paid family medical leave and why I felt that this bill was really important for especially small businesses and families here in Shakopee. And so what paid family medical leave does is allows folks who are going to be gone for an extended period of time, 3 weeks or more, to take care of a dying parent, to take care of a sick kid, or if someone's going through chemo, to make sure that they have the time and ability to take the time off and still have a wage coming in order to cover that time. And so this will help small businesses compete with larger businesses, because small businesses just can't afford to have the same amount of benefits as big businesses do in the state of Minnesota. And so it will help families, it will help small businesses, and it will help seniors who are wanting to spend time with their families.
Mr. Tabke, do you think that the state has done enough to respond to the opioid drug crisis, or should more be done?
We have absolutely not done enough to respond to the opioid drug crisis in Minnesota. This is a major, major thing. We had, I'm really proud of the work that we've done in the past year, past 2 years to help with the opioid crisis. We passed a bill that sets up education, that sets up tests, that sets up ability for people to recover from opioid addictions. And so it is a really, really great first step in the right direction. But like everything, this takes more funding and it takes more work. And so what this does is we have to make choices. It's not just making sure that we are funding programs like these. It is making sure that we're funding programs like these and the money that we'll save on the other side in incarceration and in policing and in public safety and those different kinds of things. We have to make sure that we're balancing and looking at the long-term future of our state and not just tomorrow.
Mr. Mortensen, do you think that the state has done enough in regard to the opioid drug crisis? And if not, what more should be done?
Well, it's a good question. I talk to people who suffer from chronic pain, and the answers and the solutions have been put forward by the DFL Control House by punishing the manufacturers of these drugs and taxing them. This doesn't do anything for the people who have a legitimate pain that they deal with every day. What that does is it increases the prices for these people, and I believe that to be wrong, but of course, again, Brad and the DFL, they're just economically illiterate. And he's probably going to talk about the same thing when it comes to insulin. They're putting new regulations on insulin manufacturers and fining them $600,000 a year if they refuse to comply with their rules. Of course, that's going to drive up the cost of insulin.
Mr. Mortensen, what changes are needed in the state support for post-secondary education?
Well, I'm a big fan of post-secondary education. My wife used it, and she's an incredible advocate for it. So that's a program that I'd like to protect. And when it comes to these meaningful things, I think it comes down to prioritization of spending and making sure that we're putting things forward that set up our youth for success and save from additional college debt that they don't need to take on.
And Mr. Tabke, what changes are needed, in your view, in state support for post-secondary education?
Yeah, thank you. This one is incredibly important. Students are suffering significantly right now, and they have for the past decade, with student debt and making sure that they are just, they are overburdened by student debt. So we've, in Shakopee, seen a significant number of students who graduated from college, went somewhere else, and can't move back home because they can't, that we don't have enough rentals available, because they are unable to, get a mortgage to buy a house because they have so much student debt. And so we need to make sure that we are reducing the cost of post-secondary education. And by doing that, we freeze post-secondary education costs like we worked on in the House. We also need to make sure that we're emphasizing trades that make sense. So I'm really proud of the academies and the work that Shakopee School District has been doing on focusing on the outcomes and focusing on jobs and focusing on making sure that our students are looking at careers and what the future looks like for them and how they can best achieve that, whether that's going to an apprenticeship, whether that's going to trade schools, whether that's going to a four-year college, whether that's going to post-future. It's really important that we are working on those together.
Mr. Tabke, should the state ensure that all businesses and individuals have access to high-speed internet? And if so, how?
Yeah, we passed a bill in the House that was worked on really closely with the Senate, and so this is something that we have a significant amount of infrastructure being put in as we speak, and it's not critical for just all of Minnesota. A lot of people think this is a greater Minnesota problem only, but we have many areas in Scott County, just south of the city right here, that have no access to high-speed internet in Scott County, and so we have to make sure that for ensuring that we have all the opportunities for people to succeed and businesses, for kids to educate, and for access to different things, that we make sure that we have high-speed broadband access to everyone in the state of Minnesota.
Mr. Mortensen, do you think that the state should ensure that all businesses and individuals have access to high-speed internet? And if so, how should they go about it?
Sure. Well, this feels like a great opportunity to just slow down a little bit and recognize the incredible differences between Brad and I. He wants the government to come in and mandate all sorts of behavior, businesses to mandate benefits, for Wi-Fi companies, broadband companies to mandate coverage, where the fundamental role of government is to protect your rights and to protect you from illegitimate force. The role of government is not to come in and start to sprinkle around Wi-Fi and tell businesses what to do. These are all attempts at trying to win and buy votes, period.
Mr. Mortensen, should the state provide additional financial support to local school districts that are facing financial challenges related to COVID-19?
Well, I would elevate this to the fact that our school district is still suffering from Brad's buddy, Rod Thompson. And I supported this 2 years ago, an ability to recall locally elected school board officials, as well as city council members. I ran on this 2 years ago. It's what a lot of people in the community are yearning for, because sometimes we make bad hiring decisions. It happens in businesses, and we have a process, or we should have a process, to correct that mistake. It's fundamentally the same thing with police departments. When there's a bad cop, because sometimes it can happen, oftentimes the police chiefs, they're handcuffed. They don't have a process to get rid of the bad apple. So I supported that 2 years ago. Brad claimed he supported it 2 years ago, and he realized, boy, this might earn him some more votes. And of course, over the last 2 years, he's done nothing with the issue.
And Mr. Tabke, do you think the state should provide any additional financial support to school districts that are struggling with extra costs related to the pandemic?
Yes, this is one of the most important things that we need to do right now, is making sure to take care of our kids here in Shakopee. And so yes, we absolutely need to make sure that we are taking care of our students, making sure that we're taking care of our teachers, and making sure that it's a safe working environment for teachers, paras, cooks, all those folks all throughout the school. So we need to make sure to do that. And I'm glad my opponent talked about the differences between us, and there absolutely is, which I'm assuming that everybody is picking up on right now. And I very much believe that Minnesotans value their neighbors and want to take care of each other. And there's a base level that people are willing to accept, and people are willing to accept the making sure that everybody gets a fair shake at an education, making sure that everybody has a fair access to health care, making sure that people have fair access to transportation and workforce education to get to a job that will make them able to prop up their families and work together. So it is a very clear difference of wanting to work together and make sure that we are all getting a fair shake at life.
Mr. Tabke, if you're reelected, how would you work with elected officials from other parties to get things done for our community?
Yeah, this is one of the most important things that we all need to really think about right now, is that here in the state of Minnesota, there is a lot of work to do. There's a lot of work to do at the federal level. There's a lot of work to do at the county and the city levels. There is just a lot that we need to tackle and work together to solve. And so I'm really proud of the fact that I passed a significant number of bills that had been sitting on the sidelines for nearly a decade, that we got those passed in my first term. We got passed work that would allow Canterbury Park to stay open and make sure that we save thousands of jobs in case there were to be a government shutdown. We worked with Republicans and Senator Pratt and Representative Albright on that bill, worked with Representative Heintzman, who is Republican, on getting a hunting bill passed in order for leash dogs, in order to use those when they're hunting in the state of Minnesota for the first time. Worked with the most conservative senator on NCAA bills. And so there are a lot of things that I have proven to work together, and I'm really proud of that fact.
And Mr. Mortensen, if you're elected, how would you work together with elected officials from other parties to get things done for our community?
Well, first and foremost, I would tackle this equal shared parenting issue. I've been talking about this a lot lately. Brad, once again, claimed he supported it 2 years ago, lied, voted against it. But that's how he behaves. That's the kind of guy he is. That's a total nonpartisan issue, and the state deserves that. But I want to go back to Brad trying to claim that the differences between him and I is that somehow I don't want health care, and I don't want my kids to have an education, and I don't want people to have a fair shake. It couldn't be further from the truth. I just believe, and I know from experience, that government is terrible at delivering these services. So my goal and my whole effort of running for office is to protect the American dream so that kids are offered a fair shake, so that there is opportunity that they can pursue. But all of these fantasy ideas of how government can do all of these things on our behalf, it costs money. And that money has to come from somewhere, and it gets pulled from our pockets and prevents us from pursuing the American dream.
Our time is running out, but anyone whose questions have not been answered tonight should feel free to contact the candidates or their campaign offices. You can also find out more about the candidates by watching their interviews that are posted on the Shakopee Chamber website on the elections page. Each candidate will now have 1 minute for their closing statement, and in alphabetical order, Mr. Mortensen will go first.
Well, thanks. I was just talking about the American dream. That's why I'm running. I was born and raised right here in Shakopee, and this is where I started my pursuit of the American dream. And my kids are the 4th generation of Mortensens to be living in Shakopee. And it's where I hope and pray that they'll be afforded the opportunity to pursue their American dream and start their better quality of life. I've been a servant leader in this community. The last 6 years alone, I have donated over $100,000 back into Shakopee. People who have reached out and said, my husband's coming home from the Mayo Clinic. We need to have superb indoor air quality in my home. We went and cleaned those air ducts for free. I've worked on so many homes around town for free that have flooded over the last 3 years. I do this because I care about this community. It's where I want to be, and that's where I want my kids to be. I'm the only candidate up here that's pledged to support term limits, that pledged to never raise your taxes, and I'm by far, obviously, the only candidate here that is willing to put my trust in you, my neighbors, with more freedom before trusting government bureaucrats with more power.
Mr. Tabke, please share your closing statement.
Thank you so much, and thanks to everybody who has tuned in to watch this. It's an honor to serve in our community. I absolutely believe that Mr. Mortensen and I both want what is better for our communities and make sure that we are taking care of each other and that we get to the next steps in the state of Minnesota. And with that, we just have very different, divergent views as to how we get there. And so as you may know, I used to be the mayor of Shakopee. I was the chair of the Shakopee Chamber of Commerce at one time, and also worked really hard on making sure that we are elevating our community, moving Shakopee forward. And so I want to continue that work in our community, and I really ask for your vote as we go into this election cycle. Everybody needs to remember that they can vote every single day. They can vote by absentee ballot. They can vote in person at Shakopee City Hall or on November 3rd as we get into this election. So I thank you very much, everyone, for your time, and really look forward to working with everyone again if I earn your trust and support.
As we close this part of our discussion, please remember that the views expressed in tonight's debate are those of the candidates and not of the Shakopee Chamber of Commerce and Visitors Bureau. The Chamber sponsors this event as a service to the community and we've gone to extraordinary lengths to ensure the objectivity of this forum. The Chamber does not endorse any candidate. Instead, we seek to provide the businesses and voters of Shakopee with the information that you need in order to make informed choices when you vote. Thank you to the audience this evening and to Shakopee High School for hosting our event. On behalf of the Shakopee Chamber and Visitors Bureau, thank you to all of our candidates, both of our candidates. We appreciate your time and your service to our community. Election Day is Tuesday, November 3rd. Please remember to vote. We will now take a brief intermission as we prepare for our candidates for Minnesota Senate District 55. Thank you and good night. Good evening and welcome to the 2020 Minnesota Senate Seat 55 Candidate Forum sponsored by the Shakopee Chamber of Commerce and Visitors Bureau. We're hosted tonight at the Shakopee High School. My name is Michael Clem. I'm an attorney at Helmuth & Johnson and a member of the Chamber. I'll be serving as the moderator this evening. All candidates for the Minnesota Senate District 55 seat were invited to participate. Tonight we have with us Ms. Sarah Odawa and Senator Eric Pratt. The candidates are arranged in alphabetical order. The candidates have already recorded video interviews, which are posted on the Chamber's website on the elections page, so we will not be doing opening statements this evening. Instead, we'd encourage you to watch those interviews on the website. The candidates tonight will be asked a series of questions. They will have 60 seconds to respond to each question. They each also have the opportunity to make 2 rebuttals of 30 seconds each. As the moderator, I also will have the right to ask follow-up questions, and in that case, they would have 30 seconds to answer that question. So we will begin tonight with a question for Ms. Odawa. How should the Minnesota legislature respond to the state budget deficit next year?
Thank you, Michael, and thank you for hosting Shakopee Chamber of Commerce for hosting tonight's debate. Everyone, my name is Sarah Odawa. It's a pleasure to be on for tonight's debate. To answer that question, our state is currently facing a budget challenge, deficit, in that we are currently facing a 2.42 deficit. It is going to be challenging and will require a lot of decisions and choices to be made. A lot of the issues that we have currently seen are budget cuts, and in doing so, I will definitely advocate and for a budget increase to improve our programs, especially in the Health and Human Services Department. A lot of those programs are very meaningful and beneficial to our constituents. A lot during, thank you.
And Mr. Pratt, how should the legislature respond to the budget deficit next year?
Well, thank you, Michael, and thank you to the Chamber for this opportunity. This is probably one of the most important issues that we'll be facing. Not only this budget deficit, which quite honestly, most of it will be covered by what we have in reserve. Fortunately, we had a state reserve. But I think what's even more important is the $4.7 billion budget deficit that we'll be facing in the next biennium that we have to address. Now, my experience in being on the school board, when I joined the school board, we had $1 million debt, and our kids were doing okay on testing. By controlling the rate of growth, we were able to turn that $1 million budget deficit into a $3 million surplus. We saw test scores go up, and we were able to reduce property taxes. So I think we need to be looking at the efficiency of government in order to make sure that we can, and even controlling the growth of government to make sure that we can meet our budget goals.
And just a clarification for both of the candidates before our next question. If the timers hold up an indication that your time is up, do feel free to finish your sentence or finish your thought before we move on. So the next question is for Mr. Pratt. Do you support business occupancy restrictions or even business closures in order to control the spread of COVID-19?
You know, this is something that we were dealing with really at the forefront of last spring. And as the governor put the budget mandates into, or the occupancy mandates into place, what we found was some real inequities. We found that the big box stores could be open while our small boutiques and restaurants, churches were closed and actually had very harsh restrictions. I tried to work with the administration on several occasions after hosting a COVID task force working group that we had in the Senate, bipartisan equal numbers of Republicans and Democrats, and we had representatives from industries coming in and telling us how they would address the COVID issue, how they would keep their customers and their employees safe. And quite honestly, that's what I've seen from local businesses. They all have an incentive and a desire to keep that safety, and that's where I think we ought to be heading.
And Ms. Odawa, do you support business occupancy restrictions or business closures to help control the spread of COVID-19?
I think it's very important that we have a secure and prepared strategic plan to reopen our businesses, especially when we're going to consider living in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. In doing so, I was very fortunate enough to tour downtown Shakopee to talk to local business owners about the impact and implications that had negatively and detrimentally impacted their businesses. A lot of the owners of our small local businesses have expressed concerns, and as well as keeping our safety first and the priority of their customers and employees safe. This would include a mask mandate, making sure that their employees and customers are well prepared in going into their businesses, wearing a mask. Thank you.
And Ms. Odawa, do you have any other suggestions what should be done in Minnesota to help better control the spread of COVID-19?
Yes, as a public health practitioner, it is utmost important that we protect and prioritize the health and safety of our residents, our neighbors, and in doing so, I believe that the emergency powers enacted by the legislator and Governor Walz has exemplified what we need to do to respond to a pandemic that we're living in uncertain times, and that we need to protect ourselves from one another. We need to wear face masks. We need to take the preventative measures in place in all sects, which would consider, in our educational systems, our businesses. However, we need to protect ourselves, and we need to ensure the protect health and safety of our constituents. And in doing so, I advocate on educating our communities on the effects of COVID-19. COVID-19 is real. Science is not political. Thank you.
And Mr. Pratt, in your view, what should be done in Minnesota to better control the spread of COVID-19?
That's a really important question. When the governor first declared the emergency powers, we were really all on board because this was something new that we had to get our arms around. But as we got through the spring, I think we found some things that worked, and we need to build upon those. The first thing is to make sure we have enough personal protective equipment for all of our frontline workers, and that includes our hospitals, firefighters and police officers, and even our teachers. The second would be to really focus on those vulnerable populations, and this is something that I and my colleagues have been advocating for really since we kind of started to understand where the problems were. We need to understand the hospitalization and ICU rates, and I was disappointed to see that the Minnesota Department of Health and the governor decided not to report that for a while, and even the reporting now isn't that great. And I think we need to get our economy booming again by supporting our local businesses.
Mr. Pratt, what do you think the respective roles should be of the legislature and the state governor during this pandemic?
Well, and just to finish up on the small business piece, I have a bill right now that would use $5 million of the Corona Relief Fund to help our businesses with a small $10,000 grant to help them get it off. The role of the government is to make sure that we have standard guidelines that we can face, but also to respect the rights of the individual. And so I think one of the criticisms I've had of the administration is that they have been, in my opinion, micromanaging our response to the COVID crisis. And as I mentioned earlier, we need to rely on the experts. We need to rely on the people who are out there doing it every day and have a reason to keep their employees, themselves, and their customers safe from infection, but also to understand that we can't afford to shut down the economy because we've had too much pain with the shutdowns that we've had already.
Ms. Odawa, what do you think the respective roles should be of the legislature and the governor during the pandemic?
I think in order to mitigate the control of COVID-19, we really need to trust and, follow the CDC and Minnesota Department of Health guidelines in reopening our businesses, ensuring that we have an effective plan in place to protect our neighbors, to protect our communities from the spread of COVID-19. It's important that we work together. It's important that we, find effective solutions to address the inequities in our healthcare systems, the disparities of our communities, and to find effective and innovative ways to rebuild our economy, get our businesses back to full strength. However, respecting the fact that COVID-19 does not have a treatment in place. We don't have a vaccine. We need to ensure that we have our face masks and our protocol in place, as well as protecting the communities and also finding effective ways to rebuild our societies.
Ms. Odawa, changing topics to education. Research shows that Minnesota has a persistent achievement gap for students from disadvantaged backgrounds. What do you think that the state should do to help close that achievement gap?
Yes, and thank you, Michael. In order to achieve, to close the achievement or opportunity gap, we need to reduce our class sizes. We need to retain highly qualified teachers who are experts, who are, willing to, and who are accepting this current change in our learning process in midst of COVID-19. We also need to hire more teachers of color. We need to, address the disparities of our marginalized communities. Minnesota's education disparities are among a higher rate of students of color, and we need to change that. We need to address these issues so that we can have successful learning outcomes for all students, regardless of their race, their gender, and zip code. We all need to make sure that all students have high-quality education.
Mr. Pratt, what can the state do to help close this achievement gap?
Well, that's a really important question. A couple of things that I've been working on, most that I'm proud of is some of the literacy issues. A child that can't read at grade level by third grade is 5 times more likely to drop out of high school than a child that can. And so understanding not only that we need to get children reading at grade level, but addressing the needs they have when it comes to dyslexia or any other learning disabilities. Some of our public schools are failing our kids. Now, I am a big proponent of public schools. My mom was a public school teacher. I went through the public system. My kids went through the public system, but we need to allow families to choose what's right for their students. Tenure reform, my opponent talked about the fact that we need more teachers of color, but the fact of the matter is that teachers of color are being laid off and during budget cuts more often because they're lower in tenure. And so we need to address tenure reform to keep the most talented teachers in place.
Mr. Pratt, do you believe that the state legislature should regulate the purchase of firearms by individuals? And if so, what types of regulations are appropriate?
The Second Amendment says that the government shall not abridge your right to bear arms. And, but yet we're tasked with keeping our public safe. We have a lot of laws on the books today that address the right to bear arms and how you can purchase a firearm. You have to go through a background check. You have to be able to get a permit to carry. Those are things that we've done to protect the safety of our communities. Now, some things that I've worked on was one, we found out that state agencies weren't reporting to the NICS system, which is the database that background checks are performed through, and I was able to push through legislation that required state agencies to report more quickly. I've authored legislation that when someone has their due process and their gun rights are taken away because of previous violence, that the courts must follow up, and I'll finish on the next question.
Ms. Odawa, do you believe the state legislature should regulate the right of individuals or regulate the purchase of firearms by individuals? And if so, what types of restrictions are appropriate?
Yes, I do think that we should regulate. With gun violence, it is, a known fact that, we need to ensure that gun safety is our number one priority, especially with what's on the news these days. We have so many gun shootings. We need to regulate background checks, gun laws that will prohibit those from, assaults, and so we need to assure that our laws are in effect. We are not taking anyone's, by proposing laws on guns, we are not taking away no one's rights. Everyone has a right to carry, but they need to go through the safe way and the legal way in doing so.
Michael?
Yes, Mr. Pratt.
Thank you. I just wanted to finish up on my last statement. So where my opponent and I agree is that dangerous people shouldn't have access to guns. What I've done is propose legislation to say that if a court removes your gun rights, the court needs to follow up and get it done. Quite honestly, when they've taken those rights away, they've only actually executed that about 30% of the time. And then increasing the penalty for straw purchasers to keep guns out of the hands of criminals who have also had their gun rights taken away. What we shouldn't be doing is putting additional hurdles in the place of law-abiding citizens.
Ms. Odawa, what do you see as the most important issue facing the state of Minnesota today?
Yes, the most important, can I have more than one issue?
Sure.
So a few issues that I feel that are very important to the state of Minnesota and to the people of Minnesota. One is expansion of mental health services. We know that with living in this pandemic, we've seen an increased rate of mental health cases. And as a mental health practitioner, I am very strongly advocating on more services, not only in our clinical settings, but also in our public schools, with more emphasis on increased psychologists, social workers, and counselors on school grounds. I do believe that as a mental health provider, we need to have access for more availability and accessibility for services in place, such as catering to our individuals with persistent mental health illnesses, as well as serving for developmental disabilities. And so yes, mental health is an increased need, and we need to really follow up with that.
And Mr. Pratt, what do you see as the most important issue or set of issues facing the state today?
Well, certainly our response to the coronavirus is one of the most important issues that we face today. And what I've advocated for is putting as much emphasis on flattening the curve on the economic crisis as we've put on flattening the curve of the pandemic. And certainly we have to make sure that we don't overwhelm our healthcare system. That's of key importance, but also looking ahead to the next budget session and knowing that we're going to have a deficit, we also need to look at how to come out of this recession as strong. And so a couple of things that I've been working on, and I've been putting my emphasis on, one, really supporting our small businesses to help them get through the current mandates and regulations that they have to face. Two, I'd put together a suite of incentives to get business investment into the state. I've talked about 179, which allows companies to expense, expanding the Angel tax credit and making it permanent, as well as research and development incentives so that we can get some high-tech, high-paying jobs back in the state.
Mr. Pratt, on the topic of healthcare, what do you see as the best way to make healthcare available and affordable for all Minnesotans?
When I got reelected 4 years ago, it was of top of mind. We were seeing health insurance premiums skyrocket 60–70% a year. I had families calling me and writing me emails saying that they were going to take the Affordable Care Act penalty and self-insure rather than because they couldn't afford the insurance that was being presented to them. What we've done in the Senate is, one, we put together what's called the Premium Security Act, and it sets aside money to help keep premiums low for people with pre-existing and chronic conditions. And it's quite honestly performed much better than we ever anticipated. It's being modeled by other states as something in order to address healthcare affordability. We need increased transparency when you go to your doctor to know how much things cost. And we need to take a look at reimportation of pharmaceuticals as well as, well, I'll finish up in a minute.
And Ms. Odawa, in your view, what's the best way to make healthcare more available and affordable for all Minnesotans?
Yes, I think with COVID-19, our healthcare system, let me rewind. As COVID-19, we've seen how inadequate our healthcare systems are, with lack of PPE. We need an effective system in place that will be accessible for all patients. I think we need to emphasize on an increased need for our public health infrastructure and workforce opportunities. We need to address the high costs of prescription costs. I think that's a number one issue. We've seen that with, 2 years ago with Alex Smith, who died unfortunately due to rationing. We need to make these costs more affordable. We need to reduce our premiums. We need to also emphasize on our patients who are lacking, the systems to find better health outcomes. We need to have more community health in place. And so that is another area that we need to focus on.
Ms. Odawa, shifting now to the topic of taxes. The Minnesota Chamber of Commerce has done multiple studies finding that Minnesota's income tax rates, both for businesses and individuals, are among the 5 highest states in the whole country. Do you think that Minnesota's taxes should be reduced in order to be more competitive with other states?
Yes, so we need a fair tax code that puts people before corporations. We also need to address right now the businesses that are currently suffering. We need to address, we need to have them have a fair tax relief so that they're able to survive during this pandemic. And so we need to address these issues. I think, if elected, I will definitely support our businesses through ensuring that they have long-term solutions in place and are better prepared in case of another pandemic so that, our taxes, we don't have to raise our taxes in that case. So, thank you.
And Mr. Pratt, the same question to you. Do you think that Minnesota should lower its income tax rates for businesses and individuals to be more competitive with other states?
I think we need to look at the entire tax code to become more competitive because, as you mentioned, we are one of the highest tax states in the country. And yet, things like the angel investment tax credit to bring capital into the state for our startups, being allowed to expense out capital expenditures to encourage businesses to invest in growing, but also relief for Minnesota families. Quite honestly, our lowest tax rate is higher than the tax rate of 23 other states. And we have one of the most progressive taxes in the country. Our highest tax rate is 4th highest in the country. And so as my opponent talks about fair, I never know I talked to somebody earlier this week who said, what is fair? I'll pay my taxes. I just need to know what fair means.
Mr. Pratt, how do you think the state should deal with the issue of traffic congestion here in the Southwest Metro, specifically at the intersection of Highway 169, 13, and 101 by the bridge? One of the things that we found with the pandemic is that transportation is going to change dramatically.
I don't think we're going to see the same hub and spoke commutes that we've seen in the past where everybody south of the river goes to Minneapolis. I think we're going to see a lot more people working from home. We're going to see growth of business in the suburbs. And that's why I was proud to help support the 495 bus route that basically brings people to work here in Shakopee. But also we need to build out the capacity of our system. And when I was on the transportation company, I was proud to support the corridors of commerce for 169, which covers or carries half of the agricultural product in the state. And what we've seen when we had floods is expanding the number of lanes reduced the congestion. And so building some sort of lane expansion, either high occupancy vehicle or reversible commuter lane, with the footings already set between the two bridges would be an economic way to increase the capacity over 169.
And Ms. Odawa, what ideas do you have to help reduce traffic congestion in the Southwest Metro?
Minnesota's infrastructure is currently crumbling. We need to invest in, or we need to prioritize in investing our repairing of bridges and roads throughout the district. You know, as a state senator, I will definitely fight to create better means of transportation, and that will include, you know, including additional bus lanes, you know, making sure that our traffic is cleared and that people would get from point A to point B if they're traveling to the Twin Cities. I know that with COVID-19, a lot of people are working from home, so we need to create a means that will, you know, increase the availability of cars or using public transportation means to get to, from, and work. And so it would be nice to see a reliable transit system in the district to get from District 55 to, say, Greater Minnesota.
Mr. Pratt, what should be the state's minimum wage level? And should communities be allowed to adopt their own higher minimum wage requirements?
Well, I believe the minimum wage is about where it should be, and that's a, you know, we could get into a minimum wage debate about what different economists think. As chair of the Jobs and Economic Growth Committee, I've been very concerned with how local communities have enacted their own wage laws. What we're finding is that Minneapolis and St. Paul, those cities, are imposing wage laws and labor laws that impact businesses not only here in Scott County, but maybe in Duluth or St. Cloud or other places. They should be able to control only what's within them. So the other thing I've heard from businesses is that they need one common stable system. And so I've supported what we call the Uniform Labor Standards Act, which basically says that the state takes, really the state sets the level for minimum wage and all other benefits.
Ms.
Mandated
Odawa?
benefits, I mean, sorry.
Sure, thank you. Ms. Odawa, what do you believe should be the state's minimum wage level? And should cities be allowed to adopt their own higher minimum wage?
I think that would be situational, and depending on, you know, the profession. I do believe that in our educational systems, our educational support professionals are not getting enough wages or not getting paid at a higher rate. And so we do see that it does fluctuate. We need to maintain a balance. We need to ensure that our, you know, Amazon workers are receiving, you know, a certain wage per hour or making a certain, being paid at a certain rate versus, you know, not being able to have a job that doesn't, you meet the qualifications but are not being paid as you should. And so I think we need to, you know, address the issues that we're currently facing during this crisis. You know, a lot of people need better wages. We need, you know, people who are highly qualified for jobs that they're taking to be paid at a higher rate. And so, yes, I would like to see changes to our wages.
And Ms. Odawa, do you believe the state of Minnesota should require paid family and medical leave? Or should employers be able to put together their own benefit packages tailored for their own situations?
I do advocate for paid family leave. I think it's very important. As a disability claim manager, I've worked for various companies, long-term disability, short-term disability, and I've seen, that it is beneficial and effective to have someone who is taking off for leave for a medical health condition and needing to take that time off to heal and to recover. And that applies with, maternity leaves. And so, yes, I do think that it is important that we have paid family medical leave, as it should be required, and we should see that going forward.
And Mr. Pratt, in your view, should the state require paid family and medical leave, or should it leave it up to the employer to put together their own benefit package?
Well, I think my opponent and I agree that we want people to be safe and we want them to take care of themselves. The question is how. Just a few short months ago, we were having a hard time finding people to take jobs. And we saw employers adding benefits like paid family and medical leave. We also have a private marketplace out there already that provides these benefits. And so I don't see a need for the state to take that over and take on that expense and create a whole new bureaucracy, because what we learned through that debate was that many of our employers that already offer this benefit would then give it up and hand it back to the state to manage. So I clearly believe that incenting or allowing businesses to compete for employees is the best way to go.
Ms. Odawa, what changes do you think are needed in state support for post-secondary education?
I think there are many changes that are needed in higher education. I think we need to, like I mentioned earlier, retain our highly qualified teachers. We need to ensure that, our staff are paid, fairly. We need to ensure that our students have a successful learning experiences in college, and, ensuring that, they have programs assisting our students to ensure that they're able to get into a program to pay their student loan debt. So we need to ensure that we have successful outcomes for our students who are, looking at or scouting for the best colleges. We need to ensure that they receive high quality education while, going into internships, programs that will potentially lead them to their desired careers. And so, yes, we do need to reflect, and we need to change, the way we're seeing our higher education programs are going.
And Mr. Pratt, do you believe any changes are needed in state support for post-secondary education?
Thank you. And yeah, I do think there needs to be some changes. And I think one of the most effective things that we've done is allow college in the schools. My children and thousands of others have benefited by earning college credit while in high school. And it allows them to graduate within 4 years. I've also supported, I co-authored the Pipeline Apprentice Program, and I've supported other apprentice programs and internship programs to help people find a job at really low cost and to get hands-on experience. But I also think we need to rethink the liberal arts model and see if really the requirements that we're asking kids to take in college are necessary for the next step. And what I mean by that is my own daughter had to take history of baseball to fulfill a piece of requirement. And she got nothing out of that class by becoming a physical therapist. And so we need to rethink those requirements and what's required in a college education.
Mr. Pratt, do you think that the state should ensure that all businesses and individuals across Minnesota have access to high-speed internet? And if so, how should this be done?
I do believe that the state needs to ensure that we have access to high-speed internet across the state. This is maybe most important base level thing that we can do to ensure that Minnesota business is competitive globally, and that's what we have to look at. Also, as we, I think, permanently and structurally change the way we work, it becomes even more important for kids at school, for small businesses in greater Minnesota, or even here in Scott County, to be able to compete. So we've put forward in this last budget cycle $35 million to start building it out, and I expect that as time goes on, we'll continue to invest more, because this is how Minnesota competes with other states. This is how Minnesota competes in the world.
And same question to you, Ms. Odawa. Should the state ensure that all businesses and individuals across Minnesota have access to high-speed internet? And how should that be provided, if so?
Yes, it is very crucial that we have high-speed internet throughout the state, and especially in District 55, where we have our rural areas that have a hard time, people having a hard time logging on from, working from home, or with our children, learning through distance learning. And so it's very important that we have broadband access, and I am very, vocal about broadband access in our homes, in our businesses. We need to ensure that we have a great and functioning technology to ensure that, we get things done, and we get things done the quick way. And with having broadband access in our schools, in our homes, in our businesses, to, have sustainable development and livelihoods, it's very important, yes.
And as a final question, general question now, Ms. Odawa, how would you summarize what you see as the primary role of state government?
Yes, the primary role of state government is communities working together. As a mental health practitioner and a public health professional, I find it very important, and with my experiences working with various communities ranging from the immigrant population to individuals with mental health illnesses, developmental disabilities, my professional experiences have been working with people and for the people. And so it's very important that we have a government, a functioning government, that will build livelihoods, thriving communities, and to ensure that we are all working together on a united front to, tackle these issues of healthcare, to tackle the issues of, socioeconomic disparities. We need to address these issues, and being a leader and being a representative of and for positive changes. So thank you.
And Mr. Pratt, what is your view of the role of state government?
My view on the role of state government is really pretty simple. The role of state government is to protect your economic rights. You should have what you earn. It's to protect your property rights. And it's to protect your human rights, your civil rights. The role of state government is to protect those things and to get out of the way. And so, I look back to our forefathers and I say, why is this such a great state? Why is this a prosperous state? Because we allowed the ingenuity and the work ethic of Minnesotans to build this to be a great state. And I really want to encourage that again. I worked with the governor's office and the Department of Economic Development to create Launch, which will help foster high-tech entrepreneurship. Because one of the things I think we're missing, and I think back to when I was a kid, this was a high-tech hub, and we've lost that. We've lost Control Data, we've lost Honeywell, we've lost Cray Research, and we need to get that back, because I think medical and information technology is the way of the future, and something that I think we should be really focused on bringing back to Minnesota and making it a central and attractive place to be.
Unfortunately, our time is running out. If your questions have not been answered by the discussion tonight, please feel free to contact the candidates or their campaigns. Also, there's more information on the Shakopee Chamber website on the elections page, including interviews with each of these candidates. Each candidate will now have 1 minute to make their closing statement, and in alphabetical order, we'll begin with Ms. Odawa.
Thank you, Michael. So my clear message that I'm here tonight for the voters is to vote for someone who will work with you, who will address the issues, who will work to bring positive changes. You know, like I said, I am, you know, someone that has a great work ethic, has worked with various communities, and has truly the passion to bring positive changes to our district. Our district is diverse, it's thriving. We have so many opportunities to offer in a developmental aspect. There are so many people, you know, buying homes, raising their families, living in a safe environment to increase our jobs, to ensure that we have educators that are well-trained, to ensure that we have, you know, the community framework in being and living together in unity. And so I will be your voice for positive change. I will work towards bringing a sustainable and thriving community.
And Mr. Pratt, please share your closing statement.
Well, thank you, Michael, and I want to thank the Chamber again for this opportunity to talk to voters and allow them to see the differences between me and my opponent. I want to thank my family. You know, this is a really hard job, and you can only do it when you have the support of your family behind you. And so I want to thank my wife, Tina, and my two kids who have been really the rock solid support that I need as I keep some crazy hours sometimes. And I want to thank the community. It's really been an honor and a privilege to serve you in the Minnesota Senate over the last 8 years, and really an honor and a privilege to represent the area that I grew up in. Why do I think voters should vote for me? I bring the experience. I've been through the tough decisions before, both on the school board and at the state level. Over 70% of my bills have had bipartisan support, and every one of the major pieces of legislation I've passed have passed with bipartisan votes. Because I focus on solutions that have become models in other states. And so I hope I'm representing the values and the things that are important to you, because I don't only represent the Scott County, I represent the state. So thank you.
Thanks to both of you. As we close this part of our discussion this evening, please remember that the views expressed in tonight's debate are those of the candidates and not those of the Chamber and Visitors Bureau. The Chamber sponsors this event as a service to the community, and we've gone to extraordinary lengths to ensure the objectivity of this forum. The Chamber does not endorse any candidates. Instead, we seek to provide the businesses and voters of Shakopee with the information you need to make informed choices when you vote. Thanks to the audience watching online this evening and to Shakopee High School for hosting our event. On behalf of the Shakopee Chamber and Visitors Bureau, thank you to all of our candidates. We appreciate your time and your service to our community, both of you. Election Day is Tuesday, November 3rd. Please remember to vote. We will now take a brief intermission as we prepare our candidates for City Council. Thank you and good night. Good evening and welcome to the 2020 Shakopee City Council Candidate Forum, sponsored by the Shakopee Chamber and Visitors Bureau. We're gathered tonight at the Shakopee High School practicing social distancing. My name is Michael Clem. I'm an attorney with the law firm Helmuth & Johnson and a member of the Chamber, and I'll be serving as the moderator this evening. All of the candidates for Shakopee City Council were invited to participate in this forum, and we have 6 candidates with us tonight, including Mr. Jim Delaney Jr., Mr. Nurul Khan, Councilor Matt Lehman, Mr. Mike Luce, Mr. Tyler Pouch, and Councilor Jay Whiting. The candidates are arranged on the stage in alphabetical order. The candidates have already recorded video interviews, and so they will not be presenting opening statements tonight. We would encourage you to visit the Chamber's website, and on the elections page, you can watch interviews with more information from the candidates. Tonight, the candidates will be asked a series of questions. Each candidate will receive the same question, and the order is randomly assigned. They will have 60 seconds to respond to each question, and they also have the opportunity to make 2 30-second rebuttals. The first question this evening will be addressed to Mr. Delaney. What is the role of Shakopee City government during the COVID-19 pandemic?
The role of Shakopee government is to support our businesses. Oh, I'm sorry. The role of Shakopee government should be to support our businesses. Right now, our businesses are closed. There's people that are furloughed. There's people that are laid off. Our government should be encouraging or backing our businesses to open back up so they can actually operate, so people can get the goods and services they want or need to provide for their families and provide for their businesses. At the end of the day, it comes down to revenue. If you're not able to pay your taxes or pay your rent or pay your mortgage, that's a problem. Even from the business side, if the business are not able to operate, again, that's revenue back to the city. So the city, the best thing they can do is actually encourage or help our businesses open back up, operate under these current circumstances and situations to the best of their ability. That's it.
And Mr. Khan, same question. What is the role of Shakopee City government during the COVID-19 pandemic?
Good evening, Michael, and good evening, Shakopee residents. I go with different way. I know.
Speak close to the microphone, please.
I know.
And you can take off the mask if you'd like.
The pandemic is terrible. It's all around the world, not in Shakopee. Having said that, I like to give them, Shakopee citizens, hope. Besides, business is important too, but they need the support of hope. As I said before also, life without hope is meaningless. Hope is the biggest thing you have to have for supporting these people. Besides that, you also have different kinds of loans you can provide for business, like PPP, Paycheck Protection Plan, or small business loan, or security loan. For those things, I would like to help them. And besides that, also, you support them with food and donate food. People doesn't have money to pay their mortgage or rent, even house payment. So we have to think about those things, support, and go from there and give them also inspiration.
Thank you. Councilor Lehman, what is the role of Shakopee City government during this COVID-19 pandemic?
Thank you, sir. The role of the city of Shakopee during this pandemic is to follow the state emergency guidelines, educate our public on what them guidelines are, try to encourage a safe community, and look for ways to continue operations in protecting our businesses and our citizens' livelihoods, while at the same time following the state guidelines. That is a difficult challenge. Unfortunately, we are under the direction of the state. We have taken measures along with the chamber to come up with outside seating. That's not going to work in the middle of the winter time, so more has to be done on that front. We've put together a united message to the state on our concerns and how it's impacting not only the city and the community center membership and use, but our businesses. And it's a huge challenge because Channel 5 just had a special last week where another 4 to 6 months of 50% capacity in our restaurants and bars. They're projecting 52% to close permanently, and that's unacceptable. We need to find solutions to these problems at the same time following the guidance from the state and keeping everybody safe. So.
Thank you. Mr. Luce, same question. What is the role of Shakopee City government during the COVID-19 pandemic?
Thank you to the Chamber for having us here tonight. And I believe that the role of the Shakopee City Council and city government is to follow federal and state guidelines to the best of our ability, provide help to any of the companies that we can provide help to, and be ready and able to take on whatever is necessary to help with the successful outcome of this pandemic. You know, we can't provide PPEs and all this stuff for different people. You know, that's the government, the bigger government's job. You know, we're little government, and we would have to raise taxes in order to do that. The government, the federal and the state, are able to do all of that, hopefully, and do it successfully. But we need to help our local businesses as much as possible. It's limited to what we can do. We help them out with the paperwork and that for the federal monies and state monies, but we'll do what we can, and we need to keep doing it. So hopefully we're successful, and as Mr. Lehman said, not 52% of our businesses fail.
Mr. Pouch, what do you see as the role of the Shakopee City government during this COVID-19 pandemic?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Clem. So, not to be a broken record, but I think we need to stay the line that everybody else up here is stating, that this pandemic is, it's horrible, and it is unprecedented for most anything that any of us have experienced. So, we do need to follow the federal and state guidelines, and I think we need to do everything we can to ensure the health and the safety of our community, elderly, children, all of us up here. And we also need to be ensuring that we can support the local businesses here as this has hit them most hard. And as Councilmember Lehman said, we need a plan of action, and I hope that the governor and the rest of the state, they're working on figuring out the best plan to ensure that companies can stay open and we can broaden the support for paid federal loans and et cetera.
And Councilor Whiting, what do you see as the role of the Shakopee City government during this COVID-19 pandemic?
Thank you, Mr. Clem, and thank the Chamber for putting on this event this evening. Shakopee has done a lot of things for businesses in town. We've seen the tents downtown, opportunities for businesses to get back what they can get back. The businesses have been slammed. People have lost jobs. There's a lot of people out there with a lot of stress and a lot of issues. What the city can do is create opportunities for progress. With some of those things that we did with the tents, there's always opportunities to find. There's other opportunities in the future as some of the zoning might change with retail and residential properties. We don't know what the future might happen with some of these the changes that have happened due to COVID. We may be able to create some opportunity with zoning. But I'd like to, as a city, I think we can encourage civic groups to get involved. We can also create templates to help with rental owners and things like that to work with tenants. And thank you.
Mr. Lehman, this next question goes to you. What skills and experience do you bring to the City Council?
What skills do I bring to the City Council? Well, obviously, almost 2 decades of experience. I have a proven track record, consistent track record over many years. I have a diversified experience of, well, I'm a downtown business owner during a pandemic. I have extensive experience in various areas, including public safety. I hold a pandemic certificate from 2007, 2008, 8-hour course. So I know quite a bit about pandemics. I also was on the Police Master Planning Task Force, police academies, pioneered Neighborhood Watch, was instrumental in creating the community policing as a concept which has served Shakopee very well for many years. So I bring a wealth of variety of experience. Served on the Community Center Task Force. We almost passed a referendum. Gretchen Tice was a co-chair at the time. So a variety of experience.
Thank you. And Mr. Luce, what experience and skills do you bring to the council?
I've spent 5 years previously on the council and successfully fundraised for the inclusive playground, which I think is a total success for our city. It brings people in from, I've heard, as far as almost 100 miles just for their children and grandchildren to use that facility because they have nothing near them that even equals that. I'm a successful business owner. I know how to run a business and make it work out. And I did provide the city with a new funding proposal for tax increment financing projects in which the city is able to benefit by 50% on their the money that we have invested. That's that's a pretty good savings, or for the city. 50% is that's a lot of money, and I've got an open mind. I can help the city with a lot of things. Thank you.
Mr. Pouch, what skills and experience do you bring or would you bring to the city council?
Thank you. I have been in a leadership role and management role pretty much since I finished high school about 15 years ago, where I currently reside and work in Shakopee at the software company Open Systems Adaptable Solution. I've spent my entire professional career working with relationship and rapport building, business development and management. So between my professional stance and my ability to connect with people and to listen and to try to be the best person I can be for a general good and a larger base of people, I care and I'm passionate, and I think that I can be a champion for the people. Thank you.
Mr. Whiting, what skills and experience do you bring to the council?
Thank you. Well, my almost 9 years experience on the council, I believe, helps carry that leadership forward. I've spent 30-some years in the printing industry and currently as a safety and environmental compliance person. I have I've been in a management role for 20 years in supervision role. I've been involved with Derby Days and the Shakopee 150th celebration, Scott County Historical Society. I was former chair of that. I chaired the Shakopee Heritage Society, and along with chairing SCALE, the Scott County Association for Leadership and Efficiency. I was chair of the Cable Access Corporation when that was still around. Member of the Lions Club, Scott County Agriculture Society. What I bring is a strong leadership, and I think that's what's missing. We have a lot of opportunities in Shakopee, and I think that strong leadership is going to be the key here in the future. Thank you.
Mr. Delaney, what skills and experience would you bring to city council?
Well, I have several different skills I'm bringing to the council. First is I'm a volunteer. I've been volunteering in our community since we first moved here, from the time my kids were young. I coached basketball up to the time now where I volunteer for our state science fair. On top of that, I've been a civil engineer. I did that for 4 or 5 years, so I'm bringing that. In addition, I've been a program manager now for close to 20 years in every aspect of product delivery, which helps me work with my communication, helps me interact with people. So I'm bringing not only professional, also my private, as far as volunteerism that I've done. Outside of that, I'm bringing a love for my city. That's one of the reasons I'm running, is I wouldn't be here if I didn't want to give back to my community. So that's why that's what I would bring to this position. So, thank you.
And Mr. Khan, what skills and experience would you bring to city council?
I want to bring diversity. We are in the world of people come from all around the world in Shakopee. So diverse individual like me, I can make a big difference. So that is my most important thing. And try to connect with all community members, and talk about volunteerism, as you mentioned. That is my passion. I do it from my heart also. And I've been volunteering from Scott County since 15, and I am also volunteer of Mediocrity Sioux community. So that is my passion. I do it from my heart. That's all.
Thank you all. Mr. Pouch, what do you think is the most pressing issue facing Shakopee right now?
Thank you for the question, Ms. Graham. I look at some of the issues that the City Council and other organizations are looking at today, and I think one of the biggest issues would be continuation of corporate development and land expansion to ensure that we can keep growing Shakopee and, again, not outgrow our shoes, but steadily grow our base of business so we can continue to grow and ultimately keep lowering city taxes to ensure that everybody wants to be here. And actually, I wanted to add secondarily, I think we're going to probably get into a conversation about Shakopee Public Utilities tonight, but I do think that that is a primary concern as well, that we need to address and ensure that there is more organization, liability, and transparency with the community and the board. Thank you.
Mr. Whiting, in your opinion, what is the most pressing issue facing our city right now?
It's a great question, and I think we talked a little bit about it, but right now I think it's the unknowns that come with the COVID pandemic. We don't know what's going to happen with some of our businesses. We don't know what's going to happen with some of our tax base, and how we handle that in that reduction of basically the city's income and how we manage that. That's going to be top priority in the next couple of years. Again, with, like Mr. Pouch said, depending on how the voters vote, the public utilities will be #1 on the list for next year if the voters decide to make that change, absorbing that and doing it properly and equitable. I think that's going to be important. That'll be one of the most important things that we deal with next year.
Mr. Delaney, in your opinion, what's the most important issue facing the city of Shakopee?
I think one of the most important things is we have to listen to our city, listen to the people of our city. We want to grow our city. We want to grow it smartly. We want to keep our unique identity as Shakopee as we continue to grow. We don't want to be Minneapolis South. We don't want to be St. Paul South. We don't want to be St. Paul with the river access. We want to be uniquely Shakopee, and that means keeping our quality of life while maintaining our identity while pursuing growth. I think that's one of the biggest things we face. We have a lot of new construction. We have a lot of people moving in, but it seems like we're losing our identity as being uniquely Shakopee by just pushing growth upon growth with not keeping quality of life in sight. And I think that's one of our biggest concerns.
Thank you. Mr. Khan, what do you think is the most pressing issue now facing our city?
We are facing, I would say, most important is public utilities and pandemic also. Having said that, Shakopee became, according to money.com, 30th best city in Minnesota, in all over America. So we are doing some good stuff. Otherwise, how come we are 30th place in the best city in America? So, we have to do, on public utility, I would say it is a big issue for all of us. There is going to vote for yes or no vote, but according to the Southwest Press and Shakopee Amanda McKnight, I read on this article, Shakopee is having a lot of financial issue and water issue also. So we have to look at that. And pandemic it's all over. It's unfortunate that we are having pandemic, and we have to pray to God. Then we can get rid of this pandemic and we can get back to our normal life.
Thank you. Mr. Lehman, in your opinion, what is the most important issue facing our city right now?
Well, I have to say that the largest issue, at least from my perspective, that I'm concerned about is the pandemic. Let's face it, the federal government has spent almost $8 trillion. The state went from a $1.5 billion surplus to a $6.8 billion deficit, and then we're not done yet. So I'm concerned about the economic impacts, which we're going to see in middle of 21. Even if a vaccine comes out and everything goes back to normal in 6 months, these costs are there. They will trickle down to the cities, the counties, and the townships, and we're going to have to deal with it, whether it's higher taxation. Well, the state actually is talking about across-the-board taxation increases and across-the-board service cuts. So for me, the biggest impact that I'm concerned about is the economic impact from COVID. Our businesses are struggling, our households are struggling. This can't continue, it's only going to get worse.
And Mr. Luce, what do you see as the most important issue that we're facing right now in our city?
I agree with Mr. Lehman on the COVID issue. That is number one. Without a successful way out of that, we have nothing left. Like you said, the governments, both the federal and the state, are spending money they don't have for the most part. And to look forward into the future for more construction and expansion doesn't really seem important at this point. Yeah, we've got to look at it a little bit, but the COVID issue is the biggest thing. Everybody's hurting from it, and I don't think the pain is over. I think it's only going to get worse before it gets better. The vaccine may help, and hopefully it does. Hopefully it comes out this year yet. But I don't see this being a very good 2021. I think it's going to be very stressful, even possibly more than 2020 was. Thank you.
Thank you all. Mr. Khan, you'll be first on this next question. How do you feel about the recent movements that favor defunding police departments?
Good question. And actually, Shakopee is not as bad as Minneapolis. And I don't agree with that, to be honest with you. We need our police, and they do a great job in Shakopee. So I don't want defunding.
Mr. Lehman, what is your view of recent movements that favor defunding police departments?
I'm obviously not in favor of defunding police. As I stated earlier, I had a hand in the community policing as a concept with then Chief Tom Steiniger. It was a great community investment. It's working today. What I am in favor of is police officers are in a position of trust within our communities. They're in a leadership role. When they do wrong, they need to be held accountable. And I would say that that accountability standard should be higher than the average person not in that position of trust. There are bad cops, unfortunately. They're very few and far in between, but they do exist, and they need to be dealt with because they make the rest of the departments look bad. Overall, most people's experience with law enforcement are positive. So we can't lose sight of the good by a select few bad. So I'm not in favor of defunding police.
Mr. Luce, the same question to you. How do you feel about the recent movements that are in favor of defunding police departments?
I in no way would support defunding the police department. When they first started talking about that, Minneapolis has 200 officers right now ready to go out on disability. They're working through their paperwork. There's another 150 right behind that. I believe their police force is only 800. So you take 350 out of 800, they're going to be really short-handed. And who wants to take that job the way it is now? I mean, nobody in their right mind that I can think of would want to be a cop in these times. 99+% of the cops are good cops. There are some bad cops. Everybody's got to admit that. Even the good cops will admit that. But they only make the good cops look bad, and they drag them down. I know a number of the local cops. I know a bunch of other cops from different cities. I actually rode around with the homicide squad from Minneapolis one evening. A friend of mine used to work for them until he had a stroke and had to retire. But I'll tell you what, when you ride with them, it's really eye-opening.
Mr. Pouch, how do you feel about the recent movements that favor defunding police departments?
It's a great question during these times, obviously, with so much that's happened in for justice in the community. I'm very thankful that Shakopee has such a strong police force that I think ranks very highly in Minnesota overall, but I don't think it's necessarily the answer to defund the police. What I do believe, though, is that there should be transformation and reform, and I think that there should be more situational awareness training, and potentially maybe some additional screening to help vet out and almost determine if there is an opportunity for a cop to be determined as a bad apple. I don't know how we do that yet, but I think that's something that the Minneapolis police are working on currently. And then obviously the fact that we should be able to review, more internal review, and then able to clean up the police force so that we have more good cops and representation. Thank you.
And Mr. Whiting, what is your opinion of the concept of defunding police departments?
No, it is a good question, and I think it has a little bit more to do with things that are in the police contracts and things. As far as my point of view, I can only deal with what I know from Shakopee, and we've funded the police department. We've funded body cameras. We've funded mental health training. We've funded training above many other police departments. And the key, I think, to hiring police is what Shakopee does, is we do a lot of work on the front end. We don't just hire any candidate. There's quite a process, and we hire good candidates. Can't say that for all police forces. The thing is, our police force does great work. They get into the community, they meet people. We can always do better, though. I think there's always opportunity to grow, and our police force is ready to do that. They win awards, and I think defunding, I think we need to defund arbitration, if anything.
And finally, Mr. Delaney, how do you feel about recent movements that are in favor of defunding police departments?
I think our police should be defended, not defunded. They have a unique profession. They are, it's a unique calling. It's a different kind of anointment. They're true heroes of the community. When you look at, they deal with all aspects of our society, and we look at what, I don't think we need to defund our police officers. We need to defend them. We're blessed within Shakopee that we have a police force that we do have. They are actively involved in our community. They do a lot of community events where they interact. Again, I think we need to give them all the resources that they need to do their jobs effectively and to the best of their ability. I'm not a fan of defunding the police. I think they should be defended and held up as the true heroes that they are for our city. Thank you.
Mr. Luce, this next question will begin with you. What is your opinion of tax increment financing?
Couldn't hear what you said.
What is your opinion of tax increment financing?
Like I said before, I did come up with a plan that I checked with the state and provided the city, in which the city has a better funding source for tax increment financing. So I'm in favor of it in some cases, not all cases. You know, it needs to be used sparingly and wisely. It's going to work great, I do believe, out in Canterbury area where the Canterbury Commons are. You know, that's the only thing that would have gotten that project off the ground. And without that, there'd be 300 and some acres of valuable property in the heart of Shakopee sitting vacant, basically. I think there was a taxation bill on that property of about $1 million. Well, the apartment building that's going up when the second phase is finished, the property tax on that building alone is going to be well over $1 million, and that's just a small segment of that area. So when the rest of it builds out, the city's going to see a big boom in taxation. The school district and the county will also benefit. Thank you.
Mr. Pouch, what is your view of tax increment financing?
It's a great question, and I think Shakopee has a fairly good amount of experience with that, with piggybacking on Mike Luce's here is Canterbury Commons. It absolutely was needed to support the development of that area. Some of the other ones with some of the road projects as well as the RAR expansion. I feel, again, you forego some of those gain dollars up front, but hopefully gain the full value on that tax return as the actual tax increment funding duration expires. So it is appropriate for some instances and not for others. If it is the hopes that that development will obviously gain value in the year's time, I think it's a fine solution for funding development projects.
And Mr. Whiting, what is your view of tax increment financing?
Well, thank you. You know, tax increment financing is just one other tool we have in our toolbox for creating business incentives and creating opportunities is what it is. So you can use a TIF or a tax increment financing for different things, for bringing jobs to your community, or use it for cleaning up brownfields, which are polluted sites. You can use them for bringing in low-income housing, too. We used it at All Saints, I think, to create some opportunity for rental space that's low income. So we had the RAR, we had the Emerson, we had Shutterfly, we have the riverfront development, which is going to create a whole new opportunity on the river and that whole cultural corridor that I think is going to be really exciting. So these TIF projects also grow other projects around them. So not only the jobs to build these projects and that are coming to town, but all the ones that are in process of their neighbors are going to fix up their properties, things like that. So I'm all in favor of TIF projects if they're done the right way.
Mr. Delaney, what is your opinion of tax increment financing?
I'm not a fan of tax increment financing. It's a great question. I think you're leaving the cost up to, you're leaving it on the burden of the taxpayers, us, the citizens of Shakopee. You're leaving the burden of the tax to the taxpayers, us citizens of Shakopee, by offering businesses incentives to coming here to build. The business should be able to come in and finish their projects without having to get that expense from the city. When you push that cost back upon the taxpayers, you're putting that burden on us, Shakopee. When you look at like the what's happening over at Canterbury, they're putting that construction in, but again, the taxes that the tax base, we're basically paying for the roads that's going in. Our citizens are paying for the roads that are going in. It's not Canterbury that's doing it. We're doing it out of our pockets. So I think that's, I'm not a fan of TIFs. That's just an example. Thank you.
Mr. Clem?
TIF,
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Whiting.
Yeah, I'd like to rebut that. The fact is on these TIFs is that the taxpayers aren't held with the burden. The fact is that these pay off themselves. And in fact, the roads in the Canterbury project will be paid for rather than the taxpayers paying for the roads themselves through this TIF project. So saying that it's a burden to the taxpayers, I think, is misinformation.
Mr. Khan, what is your opinion of tax increment financing?
TIF is community development. So I'm in favor of TIF for logistics and infrastructure, to build the infrastructure. So I am favoring that.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Lehman.
Thank you for the question. I support TIF and tax abatement for jobs. Jobs that pay a wage high enough that the person working that job is not eligible for additional taxpayer-funded subsidies. Now, when we use TIF for private development, apartment buildings, or business that don't have the job requirements, what in effect we are doing is taking the taxes they would normally pay into the general fund and refunding them back to that property. Now, if we did that on our citizens' properties, who would be paying for police, fire, street sweepers, plow truck drivers, sewer cleaners, people that mow the parks? The problem with TIF is they don't pay any taxes, yet they receive the services, and them services are paid by the rest of us taxpayers.
Yes, Mr. Luce, a rebuttal?
In the case of Canterbury Commons, without a tax abatement financing there, that property would still be sitting vacant, and we would be still getting approximately $1 million in taxes off the whole thing. By doing the tax increment financing, we are going to increase the tax from that property. Nobody knows at this point. We don't know how good the development's going to be. COVID's going to affect it. But I think it was the only way to go there. I'm not, like I said, we got to do it sparingly and only in the right places. But there I think it was necessary.
Any last comments before we move on from tax increment financing? Thank you all. So the final question before our closing statements, we'll begin with Councilor Whiting. Why are you running for re-election to City Council?
Great question. You know, after 9 years, sometimes, I know my wife asks, but, you know, we've started a lot of projects. We've got a lot of things going on. We've got our 2040 comp plan done, our master parks plan done. I'm really excited about the cultural corridor along the riverfront. People have been talking about that riverfront for many years. I think getting some enthusiasm behind that project is a great thing. I think we need to continue those projects. Our 10,000-foot level might have went to 20,000 foot with COVID, but we still need to continue on with the progress we've made. Thank you.
And Mr. Delaney, why are you running for City Council?
Look, I'm not a politician. I'm a citizen of Shakopee. I love the city. I stepped up to run because I didn't like the way our city is going. I still don't like the way our city is going. If you look at it, I moved here because I like the small town feel. I think we're losing our small town feel chasing after being St. Paul, Minneapolis with a waterfront, riverfront park. I think you can still have growth but keep our quality of life. I'm running because I see our voices aren't being heard on our existing city council. I'm running to put our voices back on the city council. I want to represent our community, my neighbors, the people of Shakopee, putting our voice back on the city council. Again, I think we can have growth, we can have responsible growth, keep our identity, and still meet the 2040 plan. But again, that's why I'm running, to put our voices back on the city council. Thank you.
And Mr. Khan, why are you running for City Council?
I've been living here 25 years. My 3 kids goes to Shakopee School District, and I've been working with YMCA before school, after school many years. So I'm very connected with people. I love volunteerism. I want to involve more through City Council, bring diversity in the city, and more international festival, more for all kinds of activities. That's why I'm running.
Mr. Lehman, why are you running for re-election to council?
Well, I'm concerned with some of the things that are happening, whether it's the development at record pace, a lot of subsidies happening, COVID, but really I love Shakopee. I've got 4 generations here, our parents, my kids, my grandkids. I was born here in the old hospital on 4th Avenue. I love Shakopee with all my heart. I love the people of Shakopee. I love the location of Shakopee. Shakopee has a lot of great assets. We've got a lot of a bright future if we're careful. And I'm always looking for the businesses and our citizens. I'm concerned right now that we're losing sight of our businesses and our households because there's a lot of pressure right now economically from the COVID, and if we're not careful, a lot of damage could happen. So I was looking out for the best interest of the citizens. If our citizens are strong, our businesses are strong. Our businesses need our citizens.
And Mr. Luce, why are you running for City Council?
I was born here approximately 65 years ago. I love Shakopee. Some people say, you know, just not bright enough to leave and check the rest of the world out. But, you know, we have everything here that I need. So I do love it. I think we need someone on the council that will ask the hard questions, do their homework, look to numerous sources for information before making a decision. Unlike, you know, the 2040 comp plan, I believe that was done, it was written mostly at the behest of the Met Council. It meets all their guidelines, and I think that's, you know, we're bending over for them, and I don't believe that's the right way to go. You know, it's going to be interesting to see what the new development downtown at the old City Hall site does when that housing project is finished. Is it going to benefit, or is it not going to benefit downtown? But I am hopeful, since I voted on it, that it will help and revitalize downtown. Thank you.
And finally, Mr. Pouch, why are you running for City Council?
I didn't live here my whole life. I happened upon Shakopee, and I'm very pleased that I did. My wife, Martin, and I were looking for a place to live in south central Minnesota. I worked in the cities in St. Paul, and she worked down in Le Sueur. We looked in Belle Plaine, we looked in Jordan and Prior Lake, and we happened upon a old brick house on 2nd Avenue downtown. There's a picture of it in the library. It's one of the older houses in Shakopee, one of the living houses. So I'm a husband, and I'm a father. I have 2 girls that go to school here, or in Montessori school right now downtown. Obviously, I live here, and I work here, and I have a deep passion to serve the community. I care about this town. I care about its future. I just bought a house on the south side of Marshall, or 169, which I hope to be my forever home. I plan on staying here, and I plan on serving the community. I think the city's been run wonderfully the last few years, and I'd like to keep that going.
Unfortunately, our time is running out tonight. Anyone whose questions have not been answered by the discussion here tonight is invited to contact the candidates or their election campaigns. You can find out more about these candidates also on the Chamber's website on the elections page, where you'll find recorded interviews with them. At this point, each of the candidates will have an opportunity to make a 1-minute closing statement, and we will begin with Mr. Delaney.
Well, again, I'm gonna say I'm not a politician. I'm in this race to serve my community, put our voices back on the city council. I love our city. Again, I'm going to encourage everybody to get out to vote. You got 3 weeks left. Vote, and again, I'm going to say go down the page, flip it over. Don't just stick with the president and Senate and House. Look at the 2 levies on the back. One's for our city, and as far as SPUC, and the other is for the schools. So make sure you take a look at those and go through it. Other than that, thank you for inviting me out. Thanks to the other members. I really enjoyed talking to meet and talking with these guys. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Khan, please share your closing statement.
Your vote is your voice. So if you believe in strong kids, strong families, strong communities, and a strong school, please vote for me. Together, we can achieve lots of goals. Having said that, be humble, work hard, stay safe. And thank you, Chamber of Commerce. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Councilor Lehman.
Thank you. My name is Matt Lehman. I'm running for re-election, and I'm asking for your support and your vote. I have the experience, the proven consistent record, and if any questions that you have not been answered tonight, please visit my website. It's www.re-elect-layman.com. And for the English experts out there, that would be www.re-elect-layman.com. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Luce, your closing comments.
I've had 5 years' experience on the council. I'm at this point in time in my life, I'm semi-retired, and I have the time to be able to put the research and all that together with everything that comes before council, and I think that would greatly benefit the citizens of Shakopee. I would love to expand the inclusive playground that we have already. I believe it needs to be expanded, and who can argue with the fact that those who need it the most did nothing to end up the way they are? You know, they have impediments that none of us can understand in their daily lives, and anything that we can do to help them would be fantastic. I know we have service veterans and that served our country, and we need to help them, but they made a choice not to be injured, but they made a choice to serve their country. These children didn't have that choice. Most of them were born that way, and we need to help them too. And I just have the drive to get things done, and I really would love your vote. So hopefully you'll vote for me. Thank you.
Mr. Pouch, please share your closing statement.
Yes, and thank you to the Chamber of Commerce and everybody for putting this on today. Wonderful that we could have this opportunity still amongst the pandemic. I also wanted to thank Jay Whiting and Matt Lehman, both councilmen, for all the service that they've put in for the last decade plus here. As I said from my last note, I want to be a champion for the city and for the citizens of Shakopee. I want to help to drive transparency and accountability between different boards with the different projects and land development that we have here. And I want that to be an open forum. And I want to support local businesses to ensure that they continue to thrive once we do get on the other side of this. And I'm hoping, again, that that can happen. So I think that I can offer up a new passion, a new perspective, and a fresh set of eyes. And I would love to earn your vote. And again, register to vote if you haven't already. I think that deadline's coming up soon, and or in person at your local polling place here in Shakopee. Thank you.
And finally, Councillor Whiting, please share your closing comments.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the Chamber. Angie, appreciate you setting this up. Mr. Clem, great job tonight. And the other candidates, putting yourself out here is, it's hard being up here, so thank you for doing that. You know, my name's Jay Whiting. I've lived in Shakopee for over 27 years with my wife, Melissa. We've raised 2 children here. We live down in the old part of town on 3rd Avenue. We've done a lot of things. When I first ran for council, they wanted a dog park. People wanted a second sheet of ice. They were talking about a grocery store, second grocery store. We've done a lot of those things. I think we have opportunities to do a lot more. COVID's going to slow that down a little bit. We might have some changes with our utilities, but we have opportunities here, and I'm excited to be a part of that and continue to be a part of that. And you can check my website out at jwhitingforcouncil.com, and I am asking for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you to all of our candidates. I would like to mention to the public that there were 2 items mentioned in discussion tonight that are ballot items for local voters. One having to do with the question regarding Shakopee Public Utility Commission, and the other with regard to the school district levy referendum. And there is information available through the Shakopee Chamber website, again through the elections page, with links to further information on other websites. So I'd invite you to check that out. As we close this candidate forum, please remember that the views expressed in tonight's debate are those of the candidates and not those of the Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber sponsors this event as a service to the community, and we've gone to extraordinary lengths to ensure the objectivity of this forum. The Chamber does not endorse any candidate. Instead, we seek to provide the businesses and voters of Shakopee with the information you need to make informed decisions when you vote. Thank you to the audience for watching along with us this evening, and to Shakopee High School for hosting the event. On behalf of the Shakopee Chamber and Visitors Bureau, we want to thank all of our candidates. We appreciate your time and your service to our community. Finally, Election Day is Tuesday, November 3rd. Please remember to vote. Thank you and good night.